Betting on sports can be hard, but hiring Morgan & Morgan is easy. Morgan & Morgan is America's largest injury firm. They have over 100 offices nationwide and more than 1,000 lawyers. Their fee is free until they win. Find out more information at forthepeople.com/bestbets or dial #law, that is #529 from your cell phone, and that is FOR, thepeople.com/bestbets. This is a paid advertisement. And warm and friendly hello, welcome to lovely Las Vegas for Coast to Coast Hoops with myself, Greg Hoops Peterson, now part of the VSiN Family Podcast. We've got a great podcast for you as we're going to be joined in segment number 2 by Ryan McIntyre, who does such great work over at the Sports Gambling Podcast Network, taking a look at this great game that we all know and love of college basketball. We're going to be chatting with him about some of the takeaways he's had over the last week or two of conference play, what to make out of the ACC, what to make out of the SEC. We're going to talk a little Atlantic 10. We're going to be taking a look at the games for Wednesday, so a little bit of a nice wide-ranging chat with him. And then in the final segment, going to get you guys picks and analysis on every game on the betting board for this college basketball Wednesday as we hit some bank shots. If you do have a question, comment, segment idea, what have you for this podcast, you have one of two ways to be able to offer those in. First one is my Twitter/X timeline at Juden_D1. Keep in mind, letters EM. Naming does not matter, so as per usual, please do send these into the timeline. And the other way is find an Apple Podcast review. If you rate this podcast 5 stars, it is very much appreciated. From there, you're able to fire in whatever you'd like to hear on this podcast via that 5-star review. Did not get in any Twitter/X questions today, but we had a fun day of college basketball on Tuesday. Let's take a look back at it, try to find some trends, and try to get to know these teams a little bit better.
Games from yesterday is Greg buzzing about. Here is the rowdy recap.
Florida's been one of your most profitable teams in all of college basketball, and they stomped the yard on Tennessee. 73-43 the final. Tennessee went 4 of 29 from the floor in the first half. Got a little better in the second half, but they shoot 4 of 29 overall from three-point range. They shoot 60% at the free throw line, and for Florida, they win the rebound battle 55-38 as you had Alex Condon chip in there, 12 points, 12 rebounds. Ruben Chinelu has been able to be very solid down low for the team, 15 rebounds in this one. Elijah Martin led the way with 18 points, so just clean domination from Florida, who's now 11-4 against the spread. Vanderbilt's now 11-4 against the spread as well, but they did take a loss on Tuesday as it was Mississippi State going on the road, getting the job done, 76-64. They are now 14-1 straight up, and for Mississippi State, 6 of 16 from three-point range. Josh Hubbard wasn't even a big factor in this game, 9 points, 5 assists. RJ Melendez was actually your main man with 19 points for Vanderbilt, just 5 of 26 from three-point range. They lose the turnover battle 13-11, so few issues there for Vanderbilt as SEC play is very much hot and heavy right now, but so is Big Ten play, and Michigan has been able to do a relatively solid job against the spread. They go on the road and they absolutely punk UCLA 94-75, a UCLA team that's currently in the top 10 nationally in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. For Michigan, they go 15 of 28 from three-point range. Trey Donaldson, 6 of 10 from the outside, 20 points. Vladislav Golden looked like an All-American with 36 points. Still 16 turnovers in this game for Michigan, and they actually lost the turnover battle 16-6, but they won the rebound battle 35-27. As for UCLA, you did have Tyler Bilodeau supply the team with 17 points, and Eric Daly, who was injured, did play, but didn't give them a whole lot. He had a combined 13 points in this one. So for Michigan now, 9-5 against the spread. UCLA is as well, but a big giant statement win out there. And then how about this statement being made by Iowa State? They take down Utah by a count of 82-59. Iowa State had been on the fritz a little bit with regards to their defense. Defense looked pretty rock solid here. They're now 9-5 against the spread. Iowa State is, and for Utah now 6-8 against the spread, who won 7 of 29 from three-point range. For Utah, they lose the turnover battle 18-8. They lose the rebound battle 39-38. And Damon Lipsby along with Keshawn Gilbert, they were able to combine for 35 points in this one. And then how about Mr. Curtis Jones off the bench with 23 points? So nice statement went out there. And how about Arizona being able to get things back online? Back-to-back road wins for them. They take down West Virginia, who's been very good to begin the season, but 75-56 a final. It is a banged-up West Virginia team as they are once again without Tucker DeVries in this one, so that meant that Javon Smollett had to come up big, and he had 17 points, but nobody else had 8 points or more in this game for West Virginia. Meanwhile, for Arizona, off the bench, KJ Lewis, 9 of 13 from the floor, 21 points. Caleb Love, only 9 points in this game, goes 3 of 10 from the floor, but despite that, Arizona's defense holds up. They win the turnover battle 10-8. They win the rebound battle 40-31. So nice resounding win for Arizona. Nice cover for Georgetown, who all of a sudden has become a really nice against the spread team. They've also been really good to the under as well. Marquette gets the win, but they don't cover double figures, 74-66. And all of a sudden, Georgetown's now 9-6 against the spread. They go 8 of 19 from three-point range. Malik Mack, the Mack attack, was able to give you 18 points. And Thomas Horber, 5 blocks, 11 boards, 13 points. Way that Marquette wins this game, though, you had Mr. Ross be able to give you 27 points, as it was a big day for one Chase Ross. He was able to go 4 of 6 from three-point range, 9 of 10 at the free throw line. And for this Marquette unit, they did win the turnover battle 19-13. So a little bit of something to clean up out there. Meanwhile, for Georgia, they were able to get the job done against Kentucky by a count of 82-69. And this has been a Kentucky team, hasn't been quite the same team when they've been on the road rather than when they've been at home. And for Georgia, one of the better defenses in all of college basketball, they owed Kentucky to 6 of 25 three-point shooting. Kobe Brea, just 2 of 9 from the outside. Lamont Butler was able to supply 20 points, but for Georgia, Asa Newell, one of the more underrated freshmen in the country, 17 points, 7 boards. Georgia wins the rebound battle 41-34. So nice, clean, quality win there. And for Duke, nice, clean, quality win and cover. And they cash you another under, 76 of 47 the final. Duke games have just been pretty much all going under at home, aside from that Auburn game a few weeks ago. Duke, they actually go 11 of 20 from three-point range, but they just held down this Pittsburgh team. They won 31% from the floor. Pittsburgh did. Pittsburgh lost the rebound battle 41-26. Cooper Flagg, a nice double-double, 19 points, 10 rebounds. Led the team in assists with 5 as well, threw in there a block. So, I mean, the Cooper Flagg show, it has been absolutely magnificent, and it was here. And for Auburn, that's now 3 straight non-covers for them. They do get the win against Texas. They look like the number 1 team in the country, in my opinion, but starting to get a little bit overvalued. 87-82 the final. This closing number was right around about 10.5. Where Texas, they go 5 of 14 from three-point range, with Arthur Kaluma going 5 of 6 from 3. That's a team thanks for nothing. They went 0 of 8 from three-point range, but for Texas, they were down at this game north of 20 points, really charged back. This was a one-possession game with a few seconds remaining. For Texas, they had Kaluma chip in their 34 points. The rest of the team, they had a combined 48 points. Meanwhile, for Auburn, Gianni Broom was able to clean up 3 blocks, 20 points, 12 rebounds, stuffed the stat sheet for the team. And for Auburn, they do go 8 of 21 from 3, and to their credit, 21 of 25 at the charity stripe as well. You also had some other ins and outs from college basketball on Tuesday outside the ranked teams, as Louisville seems to be getting a little bit more online as well. They were able to get the job done against Clemson by a count of 74-64. Clemson has been one of your better ACC teams thus far this season, but they were not able to show it on this night. As for Clemson, a little bit icy from three-point range, 8 of 24 from the outside. You had Chase Hunter be able to give the team a 3 of 4 three-point shooting performance, 15 points, but also for Louisville, they did a nice job of being able to force 13 turnovers on Clemson. For Louisville, they do lose the rebound battle 38-32, but they did go 16 of 20 at the free throw line. Still not on line with their three-point shooting, by the way. For Louisville, just 8 of 27 from three-point range, but despite that, they get the job done. And for the ACC, there have been a lot of teams that have been a little bit less than savory against the spread thus far this season, as one of those teams has been Georgia Tech at 6-10 against the spread. They go on the road and they lose to Syracuse in what was a slog, 62-55 final in this one. As for Georgia Tech, 4 of 21 from three-point range. Syracuse goes just 4 of 20 from the outside, but J.J. Starlin, he returned for Syracuse, and boy, did they need him. 21 big points. Without him, they probably don't get the job done, so his return was very big in this one. What else has been big has been taking a look at the MAC, and, well, the MAC attack has not been able to lend a lot of covers for Ohio, but they're now 3-10 against the spread after they take down Buffalo by a count of 88-79. This was a non-cover for them, as Ohio was up in this game by 20 points at one point. They relinquished that. As for Ohio, they do get the rebound battle win by a count of 45-33, but lost the turnover battle 16-13, as Ty Dunn was able to get her done with 21 points, 8 assists, 4 steals. Also did have 4 turnovers in this game. And for Ohio, they go 14 of 19 at the free throw line. So a few more made free throws, might be able to get that cover. And for Northern Illinois, they've been looking like one of the, shall we say, sadder teams in all of college basketball. Not a great performance against Kent State, 68-50 the final. As Kent State now 7-4-1 against the spread of one of your better under teams in all of college basketball. Northern Illinois shoots 30.5% from the floor. They actually won the turnover battle 15-11, but they got blasted on the glass, losing that battle 51-30. So a little bit of a less than stellar performance out there. If you're looking at teams to the extreme with regards to overs and unders thus far this season, we didn't have too many of those outliers that went down on Tuesday, but UTSA meet for the Roadrunners. They have been one of your better over teams in all of college basketball. 9 overs to 3 unders, and they were able to go out there on Tuesday, and they were able to play a nice scoring expose against Tulsa, but they fall in this game by a count of 82-77. This for a UTSA team that looked to have total control of this game. They were up 52-36 in the early portion of the second half. Heck, they were up double figures with about 10 minutes remaining. Primo Spears had 40 points, so he did his part for UTSA, as the team did not. And for Tulsa, they got 13 of 28 from three-point range. Keston Willis, what's up, Willis? He was able to give the team 19 points. Braden Carrington, he was able to supply 20 points. And for UTSA, they lose a rebound battle 40-31. They actually won the turnover battle 12-6, but outside of Primo Spears, not a lot doing for UTSA, so a little bit of a rough night for them. If you're looking at this team, you certainly have been trying to take a look at some unders, as for Cincinnati, 2 overs to 12 unders thus far this season. They lose to Baylor by kind of 68-48, as for Cincinnati, it feels like they were a little bit top-heavy coming into the season, as for Cincinnati, it felt like they came into conference play having played a lot of, shall we say, cream puff competition, and it's starting to show itself. As for Baylor, they were actually held down relatively well with regards to the Cincinnati defense, but Cincinnati lost the turnover battle 15-11. You had No Chad Omier chip in there 18 points, 10 rebounds, so rock solid there. A few teams I went through before. Georgetown continued to cash you some unders, 4 overs to just 11 unders. Louisville, 4 overs to just 12 unders, and then you've also had a very good under ratio with regards to Kent State as well, 9 unders to just 3 overs thus far this season as well. And then this has been another team that has been relatively solid to the under, with West Virginia 4 overs, 9 unders, and a push. And then Xavier, the X-Men, they're now up to 11 unders to just 5 overs, and they could not get the job done against St. John's. St. John's, they do get the job done on the road, 82-72. This was an over for Xavier. I expect a few more of those moving forward, but the over cashes despite the fact that these two teams want to combine 6 of 34 from three-point. Zach Fremantle did make his return for Xavier, and he made his presence felt with 22 points. Team loses a rebound battle despite that, though. 50-30. That's where Xavier went wrong in this game. Zuby Ejiofor, 18 points, 12 rebounds. RJ Lewis was able to chip in there, 18 points, 10 boards. And for St. John's, they got up 84 field goal attempts in this game. So, rather remarkable what we saw out there. And then this was a rather remarkable meltdown as well for Wyoming. They just were unable to get the job done at home against New Mexico. 61-53 the final, as this game was a slog. And for Wyoming, they led this game by 14 points at the half. If you, like me, had the points with home underdog, this one was very much less than savory, I think is the best way of being able to put it. For New Mexico, Jonathan Dent was able to chip in their 22 points, and for New Mexico, they win this game despite going 5 of 21 from 3, as they went 18 of 22 at the free throw line. Wyoming, 10 of 17 at the free throw line. So if you have anyone to blame the non-cover on, certainly the free throw shooting. UNLV now 4-9-1 against the spread, by the way. They lose, and they do not cover against Boise State. This by a count of 81-59, as UNLV actually goes 6 of 14 from 3. Boise State just 8 of 30 from the outside, but UNLV loses the turnover battle 14-11, and they get blasted on the glass 38-21. So that was a little bit less than tremendous. Colorado State has been a bit less than tremendous with regards to their cover rate, but they took it to Fresno State. This by a count of 91-64. Fresno State has been able to cover a few through the back door, but not to be on this day, as Colorado State goes 13 of 30 from three-point range. They win the rebound battle 38-33, and for Fresno State, 17 turnovers in this game, so that was a little bit less than tremendous for them. And with regards to Boise State, by the way, going back to that game, they're now just 5-9 against the spread. And then Texas Tech goes on the road. They get the job done against BYU. This by a count of 72-67. This has been a BYU team that has been a little bit up and down thus far this season. And for Texas Tech, you had Elijah Hawkins really be your main man in this game. He goes 6 of 9 from three-point range, throws in their 5 assists to go along with his 22 points. For Texas Tech, actually lose the turnover battle by a count of 9-8. JT Toppin, relatively pedestrian day. He had 5 points in 18 minutes, but that's it for BYU. Yeah, Gabakita give you 2 points and 10 rebounds, and for BYU, 5 of 23 from 3, 12 of 21 at the free throw line. Nobody to blame but themselves for the loss, and all of a sudden it feels like North Carolina is starting to get back on track just a little bit. SMU has been a better team to the over thus far this season, but for SMU, no cover to be had for them on this side as they lose to North Carolina. This by a count of 82-67. North Carolina still just 6-10 against the spread, but looked much better in this game. 11-22 from 3. RJ Davis, 26 points, 3 of 6 from three-point range for SMU. They win the battle on the glass, 41-39, but they were just not able to put in those shots at 4 of 18 from three-point range, with having Boopy Miller only supplied the team with 9 points on 15 field goal attempts. That's a little bit less than tremendous, to say the least. And then Iowa, They go into overtime and they get the job done against Nebraska for the win and cover 97-87. This Nebraska team has been able to do a pretty solid job to the under as well. This is an under that should have cashed, but obviously goes to overtime. And for Iowa, 17 out of 35 from three-point range. Josh Dix, 31 points. He's able to go north of 70% from three-point range, 7 to 10 from distance. Peyton Sanford, 6 of 10 from the outside. He was able to supply the team with 30 points as well. So that was a game that was harebrained, and that was crazy. And Illinois, Chicago, UIC has been a pretty good team to the over thus far this season. They absolutely take it to Missouri State, 80-63. The final as was Illinois, Chicago team, 8 overs to 5 unders. Not quite Indiana State level good to the over, as they've been 11 overs to 2 unders. We're going to be seeing them in action on Wednesday, but that's up for UIC, 11 of 20 from three-point range. For Missouri State, they go 6 of 16 from the outside, and for Missouri State, they actually win the turnover battle by kind of 11-9, but they also lost the rebound battle 33-17. So UIC, some good domination there, despite the fact that they go 5 of 10 from the free throw line. So we had a lot of fun, frivolous behavior in college basketball on Tuesday, and I have to mention this as well. The disappointment of Kansas State continues, 79-66. They go on the road and they lose to Oklahoma State, as Oklahoma State had Abdul Usman supplied the team with 27 points. He goes 11 of 15 from the floor. For Kansas State, 3 of 14 from three-point range, and they lose the turnover battle 19-12. So Kansas State roster that money bought has not really bought them a whole heck of a lot of wins, but hopefully we can, in this podcast, try to be able to buy you guys some covers, as you are always going to be charged $0.00 with this podcast, and darn proud of it. And if you're looking at the trends that we're seeing in college basketball right now, last 7 days, things have been underwhelming. 158 unders, 149 overs, a 51.5% hit rate to the under, while underdogs have had a rough time. Favorites are covering at 54.9% over the last 7 days, 168, 138, and 5 against the spread. And if you're looking at things overall for the season, favorites are now hitting at about 49.5%. It's been an underdog season, but favorites starting to make a surge of 1201, 1232, and 36 against the spread. And overs are still hitting at about 50.2%, 1,222 overs, 1,210 under. So that's what we're seeing in college basketball right now, and that's what we all got on Tuesday. Coming up next, we chat with our good friend Ryan McIntyre of the Sports Gambling Podcast Network here on Coast to Coast with myself, Greg Peterson, now a part of the Family Podcast. And we're back to a lovely Las Vegas for Coast to Coast with myself, Greggy Peterson, now part of the Beast and Family Podcast. It's always great to be joined by this man, as we've got Ryan McIntyre aboard. He does such a tremendous job over at the Sports Gambling Podcast Network, taking a look at this great game that we all know and love, college basketball. I know that he does a great job with the College Experience Show with Kobe Danton. For those of you guys that like West Virginia sports, as they had an interesting one with Arizona on Tuesday. He does the Ryan and Rush Show out there for West Virginia sports as well. You're able to follow him on Twitter/X at Moneyline_Mac, spelled MAC on Mac. And Ryan, it's always great to get you aboard, my friend. Thank you so much.
I appreciate it, Greg. 'Tis the season. We're a couple games into conference play. Enjoy these next couple months.
Yes, sir, we are. And what have been some of your takeaways here from the early conference play results? As a lot of these teams have played about a week and a half in terms of conference play, or if you're the Big Ten, you started this up like November 30th. But that said, it's been, in my opinion, really interesting to see how home court advantage has mattered so much and just these scheduling spots in general.
We talked about it last week, headed in right after New Year's Eve, headed into these openers, and it really held fort in the SEC. I mean, you just weigh the different home court advantages, whether it's in the SEC or Big 12, differently because of these environments compared to like the ACC that doesn't have these environments, with the exception of Duke and Carolina. But I mean, in the SEC and Big 10 and in Big 12, I really think the home teams are going to feast for the first month until teams learn how to win on the road consistently.
Yep, absolutely. And what have you made out of some of the, shall we say, successes of new coaches? Because typically when you have a first-year coach, it typically leads to some growing pains. But you know that out there in West Virginia, Darren DeVries has been working wonders for this team. Fully recognize that for Drake, it's been a little bit less than savory in their last few games. But Ben McCollum has done a good job being able to turn things around. I'm liking what I'm seeing out of Louisville right now. It feels like they're finding their sea legs. And I feel like in terms of the first-year coaches, we're seeing more triumphs really than ever before, and these guys turning things around better than ever before.
I think you're absolutely right, Greg, and DeVries has done an unbelievable job. I think that they're a little bit overvalued right now. I mean, I didn't see them winning at the Fog, and of course they got to get healthy. They're only playing 7 guys. But look over at what Mark Byington's been able to do at Vanderbilt, being 13-1 headed into this Mississippi State game. They've done a really good job. Dusty May coming over from FAU over to Michigan. Twin Towers in the front court are really good, and they're right up top as well. And then you mentioned it. Love what Ben McCollum's done. I know they took it in on the chin a little bit the last couple games at Drake, but they're right there in the valley, right in the thick of things. And you do make a good point with Louisville. I think that, yes, they lost prior, but I think they've reinvented themselves here, and they're really scoring the ball at a high clip recently under Pat Kelsey.
Yep, they certainly have been. That has been a nice little turnaround. And for Louisville, they've been shooting like less than 30% from three-point range. Not saying that they're going to be a 40% three-point shooting team when it's all said and done, but do think that we should see some positivity there. And Ryan McIntyre, who does great work over at the Sports Gambling Podcast Network, is joining me right here on Coast to Coast Hoops. And I think that that's something very good to bring up as well. How much do you want to take a look at some of these teams that might be doing for a little bit of regression / positivity? Because I felt that way about Oklahoma going into the weekend against Alabama, as we saw Alabama just completely stomp the yard with them a few days ago. And then I take a look at a team like Louisville where you can tell that they're a little bit better than what the shooting numbers indicate. And I think that that could be something very powerful for finding edges this time of year.
Completely agree. And I know you have the good guys over at Shot Quality. They do a really good job, I think, breaking down some potential regression candidates in the future. Just some of the teams, like when you see a team that's ranked at home or on the road catching points, there's usually a reason why. It's that they're overvalued in the market. West Virginia, as much as I love my Mountaineers, it's no secret they have definitely overachieved so far. I look at Rhode Island, they've overachieved in the A-10. Say Bonaventure in the A-10, what they've been able to do with that young core as well, going 13-1, I think they're a little bit overvalued. And I think that these teams just will take a little bit of a lump in league play, whether that's losing 2 out of 3, 3 out of 4, heck, maybe even like 4 out of 5 or 4 out of 6. But I think that they will come back to their form. But nobody plays at as high a level from all the way from November to March. And I think a team like Utah State's another team. Love Jared Calhoun. He's a hugs guy and what he's been able to do at Utah State. But I think those are some of the teams that are a little bit overvalued headed into a second and third week of league play.
And I'm so glad that you mentioned St. Bonaventure as well, because I agree with you. I do think that they're starting to get a little bit overvalued. And then there are some teams that they get overvalued, but you just don't like the spot to be able to fade them in general. And that's sort of where I'm at on Wednesday with them, because right now we're finding them as the underdog against St. Louis. When I was checking, I was seeing them as about a 3-point underdog. Total on that game being about a 140. What do you make out of this? Just because I think that if this game were played in like late February, early March, I'd be willing to back St. Louis, but I've just not seen what I need to out of St. Louis to believe that they can right the ship. And St. Bonaventure is a very veteran team that I feel like if this game were played in March and St. Louis had a few more games under their belt, they could get the job done with their sheer talent. But I like the way that the Bonnies are playing right now, and I just can't fade them in the spot.
I do like the Billikens tomorrow. I think that they have actually found themselves. And I think the main reason is Robbie Avila is finally getting healthy. Isaiah Swope playing at a high level. And it kind of looks like Josh Schertz's team is starting to take on their identity that they had at Indiana State. And I'm looking to fade the Bonnies. I mean, they, like you said, they're so overvalued right now. I love what Mark Schmidt's done. He always does more with less. And when expectations are low, they're definitely a team I want to back. But I think I'm going to be on the Billikens.
I think that is going to be a fun one. And Atlantic 10 play in general, I think, is so interesting because Duquesne looked absolutely awful a few weeks ago. They've been able to rise up. They've been able to have themselves some triumphs. Now, you do have that UMass versus Dayton game where I don't know if I'd be willing to take the 9.5 to 10 with UMass, but you're a Frank Martin guy. I know that you were under his coaching staff when South Carolina was able to make the Final Four. How do you take a look at that game? Because I do think that UMass still has some fight in them. You can tell that these guys have not given up, even though it has been a really rough start to the season. That said, I just look at Dayton out there in the Atlantic 10. This team has just been a bulldozer thus far.
It's an interesting matchup because obviously Dayton's coming off the most humiliating loss of the year, losing by 20 at GW. But a little behind the scenes here, Frank and Anthony Grant are best friends. Anthony Grant, ironically, is Frank Martin's youngest son, godfather. They coached at Miami High and growing up together. So I usually like to take the dog in these matchups just because of the familiarity. So I love UMass here. Last year, UMass went up to Dayton and actually kept that game close all the way to the wire before Dayton was just too much in that building. So I think Dayton will win the game just because of pure talent, but I'm going to take the Minutemen with the 9.5.
Yeah, I think that the line is starting to get a little bit lofty on this one because I just don't see Dayton losing that game outright or anything like that. But at the same time, too, this is a UMass team that they do a relatively solid job on the glass. They always give you a good effort. Just need to find a little bit more 3-point shooting right now. As Ryan McIntyre who does such a great job over at the Sports Gambling Podcast Network, joining me on Coast to Coast Hoops. And certainly we've got ourselves some fun matchups. And I just mentioned South Carolina. Right now they're 9.5-point home underdogs against Alabama with a total of a 158. What do you make out of both this game and a team like an Alabama in general, where I do think that there's going to be some positivity for Alabama? I feel like it's going to serve them very well that they played such a brutal non-conference. I do think that this is one of those cases where, much like you were talking about in that UMass versus Dayton game, we both think that Dayton gets the job done outright on the money line, but perhaps this number has just gone a skosh too far with Alabama too.
I think you're getting a discount with South Carolina at home here just because they got drubbed absolutely by Mississippi State by 40 on Saturday. So I like taking Lamont Paris here as a home dog. A couple years ago, year one, that game came right down to the wire. That was Lamont Paris's worst team by a mile. And then when they went down to Tuscaloosa last year, they got absolutely drilled by 40. I think the Gamecocks remember that. And Lamont Paris's team's defensive identity, I think they're going to feast off this crowd. And I think this is going to be a heck of a game, 1-2 possession game. So, yeah, I'm going to be on the Gamecocks plus a point. I think Alabama gets out of there alive, but definitely think it's going to be a tight one.
Yep, I think that it's going to be a tight one as well. I take a look at what we've been seeing out of this bunch in general, and I like what I'm seeing out of South Carolina. The offense has been able to come alive a little bit more. Certainly what we saw on Saturday, a little bit less than savory with taking a big giant loss, but you know what? Those are going to happen in general throughout the course of the season, and I do think that we're going to be able to get a good effort here. And just what do you make right now out of SEC play? Because we saw in the first night of SEC play on Saturday, whole bunch of favorites were able to come through. Now we're doing this as the Tuesday games are in the balance right now. As we're doing this, Georgia, it looks like, might be able to get the job done against Kentucky to be able to help sway that a little bit more. But I do think that that has been an interesting dynamic with what I think is going to be the best conference in all of college basketball when it's all said and done.
The other thing I'm looking at is home teams really feasted. Went 7-1 straight up. The only loss was Vanderbilt going to LSU. And so far, Florida looks pretty good. Georgia looks pretty good. So it looks like home teams are really protecting home court. We'll see what happens with Texas and Auburn later. But, yeah, just am so enamored with this league, just with how all these programs have just come so far in 5 years, whether with their coaching hires, the investment in the portal, NIL. It's really been a trickle down of football. And right now, Greg, I saw today with bracketology that 15 teams are in consideration. I think in the end, they're going to be a 12-bid league.
Yeah, I could see that as well because you just have so many teams that have really been able to rise up. And I do have to get your thoughts on this as well because you were mentioning the home teams for Tuesday in the SEC. Obviously, don't know how Texas did. We've got a few teams that have yet to play, but we saw that first half between Florida and Tennessee, with Tennessee going 4 of 29 from the floor. What do you make out of that sort of result? Because I think that it's fair to say that maybe Florida's defense isn't quite as good as a hold your normal team to 0 of 13 from three-point range, but Florida played that 106 of one-earned game against Kentucky over the weekend. Looks like they're going to be playing a game where Tennessee is not able to get to 50 or 55 in this one as well. Florida, I think, is one of the most interesting teams in the country because that lone loss was that close loss on the road against Kentucky, and I feel like they're a team that needs a little bit more consideration, maybe not for number one in all of college basketball, but I feel like they're sort of in the shadow of Auburn, and they're also in the shadow of Tennessee, and they need to get a little bit more love at this point for me.
I'm with you. I love Florida. I actually think, Greg, we talked about it last time on the show. I think Florida can win the national championship with those three guards. All three can get their own shots. All three can score at all three levels. I like their depth in the front court. And I think Todd Golden's a nice young and upcoming coach. And I just like the way that these pieces mesh on this roster. To be honest, Greg, they kind of remind me of UConn a couple of years ago when they kind of came out of nowhere, weren't ranked in the preseason, but then just completely passed the eye test. Maybe they take a little bit on the chin in SEC play just because they're going to be playing a top 25 team every single night. But I think they're going to be extremely battle-tested come March. It is funny, though. Give up 106, and then it looks like they're going to give up about 40.
Yeah, I mean, man, it's just been a wide range of emotions, to say the least, for this bunch. But certainly this is a team that I think could be able to get the job done, as well as a man that does get the job done, Ryan McIntyre, who does such great work over at the Sports Gambling Podcast Network. He's joining me right here on Coast to Coast Hoops, and no doubt about it, we're going to be having ourselves some nice games for Wednesday. I really think that the Tuesday and Wednesday cards are just going to be so good in general. And want to get your thoughts on this, with UConn being about a 1-point favorite on the road against Villanova. Was less than savory what we saw against Providence, but UConn drops those 3 games out there in Maui, so that means that they're still undefeated for the year in the Continental 48 states, going up against a Villanova team that has the top scorer in all of college basketball. But at the same time, too, outside of Eric Dixon, what you're going to get out of everyone else is a little bit TBD. I think that this is such an interesting matchup with this actually being at the old Finneran Pavilion, because I know the Villanova, they have sort of a rotation with that and Wells Fargo.
And I actually like that it's at the Pavilion. I think that they're more familiar with that building. I do like Villanova. I was one that kind of wrote off Kyle Neptune, but ever since they lost that Maryland game and we're sitting at 3-4, they ran off 7 out of 8. They look extremely impressive. Beat DePaul by about 100 the other night. Won at Butler. Their only loss is at Creighton, which is a hard place to play. I think UConn is due for a loss here. I think Villanova is going to tie them up top in the Big East, and it really is remarkable. And it just shows, too, that I think in the portal era, we write teams off too quickly in November when they still need to mesh, and a lot of these guys haven't played with one another. Villanova is a prime example of that.
Yeah, it's been incredible what we've been seeing out of Villanova. Jabari Breakus being able to come on strong for them as well. I do think that they might have a little bit of a tough time down low, but unbeknownst to a lot of people, Villanova actually a top 25 team in the country in terms of rebound percentage, and Yak Boyaki coming in has really been able to make a nice impact there. And then in terms of the slate that we do have for Wednesday, it is a very wide and expansive one. You get some mid-major action with like the Sun Belt, what have you. We've touched upon some of the games out there in the SEC. We've got some Big East games, what have you. Anything else that's really catching your attention for Wednesday?
You're going to call me crazy. I do like UCF laying the points against Colorado. I know they just lost by 50, but I do like the spot, and I like the matchup. I like to fade Colorado away from altitude, so I like them. I also like Calipari and company, Lang 3 against Ole Miss. I know that they were embarrassed by Tennessee, but a lot of teams are going to take it on the chin when they go to Knoxville this year. And then I also like Texas A&M going to Oklahoma and handing Oklahoma their second straight loss in league play.
I always like that angle of fading Colorado away from home as well. They've got some of the most extreme home and road splits in all of college basketball, so I think that that's a good look, and it's always a good look for myself getting you on the podcast, Ryan, because you know yourself, you do an absolutely incredible job over at the Sports Gambling Podcast Network. I know you and Kobe are hard at work, much like myself, breaking down every game every day, so love to get people at home know what's all on tap for you and how people can follow along on social media and other platforms.
I appreciate it, Greg. Always good to chop it up and talk college hoops. Best time of year. You guys can find us at The College Experience every single night, breaking down every game, just like yourself, Greg. And then West Virginia fans, we got things rolling here. I don't know if we're going to hang on here in this Arizona game. The future's bright here with DeVries. Go check us out over at the Ryan and Rush Show.
Oh, there's no doubt that it is. It has been a great season thus far for West Virginia. It's been a great season for getting Ryan McIntyre on this podcast as well, because every single time he's been joining me, he's been providing such great insights. Did so once again today. So big thanks to Ryan for joining me on Coast to Coast Hoops, now part of the VSiN Family Podcast. And coming up next, it is that time of the podcast. I give you picks and analysis on every game on the betting board for this college basketball Wednesday as we get some big shots. And we're back here in lovely Las Vegas for Coast to Coast Hoops with myself, Greg Hoops Peterson, now part of the VSiN Family Podcast. Always a pleasure to be joined by Ryan McIntyre, who does such great work over at the Sports Gambling Podcast Network, taking a look at this great game that we all know and love of college basketball. Every single time he joins me, lends such great insights. Did so once again today. So big thanks to Ryan for joining me in the last segment. Now it is that time of the podcast. I give you picks and analysis on every game on the betting board for this college basketball Wednesday as we hit some bank shots.
Most financial establishments close at a certain time, but not here. It is time for a side and total on every game on today's betting board bank shots.
Do note that as per usual, any changes that are made to these plays will be listed up on my Twitter/X feed at @GNet_D1. We are going to be going in Las Vegas rotation order. This is where we go with the major conferences first, and then these are the conference games that are going to be at the bottom. The Big South, the Patriot League, the MEAC, the SWAC. If you have any random Southland or Northeast Conference game, that is going to be at the bottom as well, along with the Atlantic Sun. So how about if we do get things started with 671, 672 on the betting board? It is DePaul, and they're on the road against Seton Hall. Seton Hall is a favorite of 3 points, total loss game between 134 to 134.5. I said Seton Hall as a 1.5 point favorite. Now that we're at a 3+, I'm going to be willing to take those points with DePaul. Now for DePaul, I've been a little bit puzzled by this team because in their games against lesser competition, they have just absolutely stomped the yard and they have absolutely romped them. When it's come to the step-up games, it has been a little bit less than savory, but this has been a Seton Hall team that's already lost at home to, shall we say, some lesser competition. I'm looking at you, Monmouth, who was winless prior to their triumph against them. They lost to Hofstra, what have you, but this is still a Seton Hall team that's been able to do a good job of being able to really slow things down to a crawl, as they are outside the top 325 in terms of total possessions per game. For Seton Hall, they just haven't necessarily been able to find that primary rebounder. Isaiah Coleman is right now leading the way in so many different categories: a steal and a half, 5 boards, 14 points per contest. So I like what he's able to bring to the table. It's a Seton Hall team that, despite the fact that they don't necessarily have that one top flight rebounder, you've got so many guys that all in about 3.5, 4 rebounds per game, like Scotty Middleton, Prince Algibi, Yeson Toomey, guys like this. They are a top 100 team with regards to rebound percentage. This has been a DePaul team that has been a little bit hit or miss with that regard. They're more around about 70th in the country, but with Seton Hall, they are also very sloppy with about 12.5 turnovers per game and shoot just 64% at the free throw line. This has been a DePaul unit that has been a top 100 team in the country in terms of points scored on a per possession basis overall, but you look at their home and road splits. Right now, they are averaging more than 25 points fewer per 100 possessions on the road rather than at home, with Jacob Meyer leading the way with 14 points per contest, shoots 41% from 3, and Connor Enright, he's a top 15 player in the country with regards to assists per game, 6.5 assists, 7.5 points per contest, but he has been turning the ball over a little bit north of 3 times per contest. DePaul, they turn the ball over about 13 times per game. Now, they don't necessarily do the world's greatest job of being able to generate those turnovers, and they do have David Skogman, who shoots 47.5% from 3-point range. I think that this game is going to be what we've been seeing out of Seton Hall all season long, a whole bunch of slugs. Now, we'll say for the Seton Hall defense, it has been relinquishing a little bit more recently. They have given up north of 75 points in 3 of their last 5 games, but we are really starting to see a rut for this DePaul team as well as for this DePaul unit. They have failed to get past the 70-point plateau, and I believe now all but one of their games since the beginning of the month of December, since the competition has ratcheted up, we have seen this offense really fall off. So I set my total 129.5. I'm in on the under. I do think that with DePaul, they're going to be able to hold in this game, won't take the points, set them as a 1.5 point underdog. 673, 674 on the betting board. Appalachian State plays against Coastal Carolina. Coastal Carolina is a underdog of 7.5 points. So the game is anywhere between 127.5 to a 128. I did set my total 127. I'm in on the under. You've got a Coastal Carolina team that has really slowed things down to a crawl. They are well outside the top 3 in terms of total possessions per game, and Appalachian State year in and year out, one of the slower teams that you're going to find in college basketball as well. They are 344th in the country. So I'm in on this under with this Appalachian State team. Just have not really been able to find a lot on offense either. 274th in the country in terms of points scored on a per possession basis. It has been a Coastal Carolina team that has been able to find a few guys in the backcourt that have been able to do a relatively rock solid job of helping this team out. But again, you've got a lot of moving pieces as they brought in Justin Gray, who is the coach over at Western Carolina last season, and he's looking to put his imprint on this program, and I would say that he's been able to find a nice go-to scorer with about 13.5, 14 points per contest, and Rasheed Jones is giving you about 2.5 assists per game, and Denzel Hines, good versatility out of him, about 8.5 points, 6.5 boards. He only shoots about 27% from 3-point range, but at 6'7", has been able to do a relatively solid job there. And then also down low, you've got Noah Ammenhauser. He's a true 7-footer that comes in from Grand Canyon, nearly a block, 11 points, 5.5 rebounds per game. I think that that's going to take it out of this Appalachian State team a little bit more, who was so good on the glass a season ago, but they lost so many of those guys. CJ Hundley, along with Miles Tate, combined for 10 rebounds per game, but Tate is really your primary point guard for this team, who's been able to dole out about 5 assists, 15 points per contest. Don't throw in there about 2.5 steals per contest as well. This is an Appalachian State team that is okay at being able to generate some turnovers. Appalachian State, not what they were last year, about 218th in the country with regards to their rebound percentage, so that's going to be a little bit of an issue. While Coastal Carolina is 40th for this Appalachian State team, though, they do shoot about 35.5% from 3. CJ Hundley at 6'11", he's able to pop some threes, give you 14 points per contest, and then guys like Jackson Threadgill have been able to come in, give this team right around about 6-7 points per contest, and Jaleel Berbrun has been able to give you good versatility as well, 8 points, 5 boards. He's able to pop it from 3, though, has been a little bit off with that regard. Do think that this is going to be a low-scoring slog. I do think that for Appalachian State, they do find a way to get the job done at home, but I like what I'm seeing on this Coastal Carolina team, and for Appalachian State, they have been a little bit sloppy with their offense. I'm going to be willing to take the points with Coastal Carolina, set them as a 7-point dog, and on the total under, set my total 127. 675, 676 on the betting board. It is Villanova playing us at UConn. UConn is a 1-point road favorite, and your total on this game between 146 after a 147. I set UConn as a 1.5 point favorite. I am really not willing to go past the 1, but I do think that they get the job done in this spot. I do like what Eric Dixon brings to the table for this bunch in Villanova. He has really been their saving grace, as he's right now leading the country with nearly 26 points per contest. He's been able to shoot it just so well from three-point range. Right now at home, he's shooting 48% from three, shooting 49% overall from the outside. Who's all going to be able to help him out is the question, though. And for Villanova, this has been a top 50 unit in terms of points scored on a per possession basis, and they've really been good on the glass as well. And Yak Boyaki, Wuga Poplar are both able to give you 6.5 plus rebounds per contest. And for UConn, we saw a little bit of a less than savory effort from them a few days ago in that game against Providence, but I do think that they're going to be able to bounce back with what you're able to get out of Alex Caravan, who has been oh so versatile. 16 points, 5 boards, 3 assists, shooting 42.5% from three-point range. And UConn is still a top 10 team in the country in terms of points scored on a per possession basis. You've had really good facilitation out of Hassan Diarra, 6.5 assists to about 2 turnovers per game. This is still a UConn team that has been able to do a nice job of being able to man up on the glass. They're a top 35 team with regards to rebound percentage, and Jamari Breakus is able to do a nice job being able to flow the ball for this Villanova team. As this Villanova team, I was talking about the rebounding just a second ago, they're actually a top 20 team in the country with that regard as well. But for this UConn team, when they're playing outside the Maui Invitational, because the Maui Invitational, they just got completely blowtorched from three-point range. They've been able to do a solid job with regards to being able to guard in terms of the perimeter, in terms of inside as well. And this has been a Villanova team that they just continue to allow open shots from three-point range. 279th in the country in terms of opponents' three-point shooting percentage. For Villanova, though, well outside the top 300 in terms of total possessions per game. This is a UConn team that has never been looking to get out of sorts with regards to their tempo, 272nd in the country. So even though I do think that you're going to find good, clean offense, do think that this total is too high for how the game is going to be played. I set my total more around a 143.5, so I'm in on the under again with UConn. Not willing to go past the 1, but I like what Terrace Reed provides down low, way that UConn doesn't turn the ball over, and just with the way that they've got a little bit more depth. We'll take the UConn spread here at a 1, and I'm in on the under. 677, 678 on the betting board. It is Northern Kentucky on the road against Youngstown St. Youngstown St, a favorite of 2.5 to 3 points. Totals between 134 to a 135, and I did set Youngstown St as a favorite of 3.5 points, so going to be willing to go up to 3 here with Northern Kentucky. It has been just a brutal offensive team outside the top 275 in terms of points scored on a per possession basis, and just really not finding anything from the outside, despite the fact that they're a team that's a little bit more geared by their guards, as this Northern Kentucky team right now is shooting about 29.5% from three-point range away from them. Now, Youngstown State is leaving a lot to be desired from three as well. They are 336th in the country. They are shooting about 28.4% from three-point range, goes up to about 29.5% at home, but this has been a Youngstown State team that has been able to bear down a lot more with regards to their defense. They're actually 52nd in the country in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. Now, the challenge for Youngstown State, taking care of the ball. This is a Northern Kentucky team that is a top 80 team in terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis. I like what Sam Vincent is able to bring to the table. Gives you double figures. He gives you about 2 steals per contest, throws in there some rebounds, and then Trey Robinson has been very good for the team as well. He throws in there about 16 points, 6 boards, 2 assists, and he's been able to shoot 40% from three-point range. So he's been able to do a lot of great things for the team, but it is a little bit more of a top-heavy Northern Kentucky team this season as well. Outside of Robinson, outside of Sam Vincent, you have to wonder night in, night out what you're going to be able to get out of LJ Wells, who only gives you about 7 points per contest. That's done a good job giving you about 5.5 rebounds per game. And Northern Kentucky improving with regards to rebounding, but shoots 64% of the free throw line, despite being well outside the top 225 in terms of total possessions per game. They turn it over 13.5 times per contest. Youngstown State, an above average team at generating turnovers. Nothing amazing there, but they also have one of the best rim protectors that you're going to find in all of college basketball, Gabe Dines, who had 7'3". We saw him run the floor over the weekend, 3.2 blocks per contest, 7 points, 5 rebounds per game, and Nico Galletti has really good versatility as well. 13.5 points, 7 boards, 3 assists, steal that per contest. Again, team leaves something to be desired from three-point range with him really being your main three-point shooter at 33%, so a little bit less than savory there. So do think that this is going to lead to a little bit of a lower scoring slog. It's a Youngstown State team that's a little bit more mid-tempo, but we have seen ever since the coaching change in the offseason, they've been playing a little bit more low-tempoed as well. So I did set my total at a 131.5. I'm in on the under, but with Youngstown State, willing to lay up to 3 with them. 679, 680 on the betting board. Salle plays us Loyola Chicago. Loyola Chicago, 1 to 1.5 point favorite. Thoughts game between 147.5 to a 148. Did set my total 145.5. I'm going to be in on the under, and with Loyola Chicago, I know that things have been less than savory for them. I set them as a 1.5 point favorite. I'm willing to lay up to a 1 with them. The reason why I place them as a very small favorite is that this team is still good on the interior. You still have Miles Rubin, who's able to give you 5.5 rebounds per game. Francis Nworke has been able to give you 6.5 points, 6 boards. He's also shooting 45.5% from three-point range. with Loyola Chicago. The issue that you have is right now in the backcourt, as you've been missing Jaden Dawson, your number 2 scorer, for quite some time, 12 points per contest, but they got him back in that game against VCU, albeit he had 10 points and the team lost by 19 points, but getting him back, I think, is just so big for this team. Justin Moore, he remains out. He was one of the main facilitators for this team with about 5.5 assists per contest. We have not seen him since about the middle of December, so bit of an issue for a team that's just about 34.5% from three-point range. And if you do have trepidation with this number, it is probably because Loyola Chicago, outside the top 275 with regards to free throw shooting percentage, they shoot below 65.5% as a collective. All LaSalle more on 73% at the free throw line. And well, what I've seen out of Corey McKeithen comes in from Ryder, 3 assists, 17 points per game, shooting 39% from three-point range. They've had Eric Acker out of the lineup for much of the season, but they've gotten him back, and in the last 4 games that he's played in, he's been able to supply the team with 13 points per contest, so you do like to see that. It's a LaSalle team that, even with Demetrius Lilly, give you about 7 rebounds per game, though I do think that they're going to have a little bit of a tough time down low against a Loyola Chicago team that's one of the better defenses on the, shall we say, interior in all of college basketball. Loyola Chicago, 77th in the country in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. It's a LaSalle team that they're clocking in more on about 163rd, albeit they are giving up about 16 points fewer per 100 possessions when they're at home rather than on the road. But with Loyola Chicago, once again, being a top 50 team in terms of percentage of opponents' missed shots that do not result in an offensive rebound. They do a nice job not allowing you to have second and third chances. LaSalle, about 103rd in the country with regards to their overall rebound rate as well. I do think that this is a Loyola Chicago team that finds a way to be able to win from within. I do think that getting back Dawson is going to be a big difference maker for this Loyola Chicago team moving forward. And it's a LaSalle team that, with regards to their defense, they've now given up 80 plus points in 3 of their last 5 games. It's a Loyola Chicago team, though, that they don't necessarily go super duper up tempo, 72 points or fewer in each of their last 5 games. I do think the Loyola Chicago going to be slowing this game down just a touch, and I did set my total as a result at 145.5. I'm in on the under, and I'm in on Loyola Chicago, willing to lay up to a 1 with them. 681, 682 on the betting board. Here's the game now right up, as we've got George Mason playing goes to Richmond, and the Itsy Bitsy Spiders, who find themselves as an underdog of 10.5 to 11 points. So on this game is 132. Wrote up George Mason. I set them as a 16.5 point favorite. George Mason is just putting the clamps down on defense right now. This team is in the top 15 in the country in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. And for Richmond, pair of triumphs against George Washington and UMass, with that UMass game coming on the road. Defense seems to be coming along for the ride a little bit more. 71 points or fewer allowed in 3 of their last 4 games, but it is still an offense that's very suspect. And as a matter of fact, they're outside the top 225 in terms of both points scored and points allowed on a per possession basis. They're really relying upon 2 guys to be able to get things all generated. Jelani Hunt has been able to give you 17.5 points. Jim's in there a little bit over 2 steals per contest, and then Dusan Niskovich has been able to give you about 13.5 points per contest as well. But for Richmond, they shoot as a collective 29.2% from three-point range. That is outside the top 300 in all of college basketball. They're about 300th in terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis against a George Mason team that is outside the top 275 in terms of taking care of the ball. So that main kryptonite of George Mason that gets sort of masked. And with this George Mason team, you've got 4 separate guys that give you at least 4.9 rebounds per game, with Jalen Haynes really stepping up down low, 12.5 points, 7.5 rebounds per game. It's a George Mason team that ranks in the top 40 in terms of being able to guard the three-point line, and they haven't even been able to get Darius Maddox going. Last year, he shot 40% from 3. Right now, he's providing the team with 14 points at a steal per contest, but only shooting about 29% from the outside. Do think that that is going to be going northward sooner rather than later. Giovanni Amaruju, who comes over from Siena, 9 points, 5 boards, have been liking what I've been seeing out of him. It's a George Mason team that as a whole, they shoot about 33% from three-point range, but I do think that this George Mason defense, which has been just absolutely putting the clamps down on teams, 62 points or fewer allowed ever since that game against Duke, and they gave up 68 points to Duke. It's not like they got completely bludgeoned by that Duke team either. This team has given up fewer than 70 points in all but one of their games this year, and the game that they gave up north of 70 went to double overtime against East Carolina. I do think that this is going to be a bit of a low-scoring slog. Set my total at a 132.5 because it's been less than savory what we've seen out of this Richmond team. I think that George Mason takes it to them. I think that Maddox sees some positivity with regards to that scoring. So at a 132, it's my max buy point on the over, but wrote up George Mason. I think that they take it to this Richmond team that has been well outside the top 175 in terms of opponents' three-point shooting percentage as well. So in on the over and willing to lay with George Mason. 683, 684 on the betting board. Rhode Island plays host to George Washington, our nation's first president. While he's not going up against the Battle of Trenton, he is a underdog of 5.5 points. So this game is 151.5. George Washington was an underdog at Trenton and pulled it off. I don't think that he pulls this one off against Rhode Island. I set Rhode Island as an 8-point favorite. I'm going to be willing to lay it in. I do fear a little bit of regression coming with this Rhode Island team because it has been a unit that has been overperforming a little bit, in my opinion. But you know what? These guys do a really good job on the glass, and that's where I think that George Washington is sort of going to be undone a little bit. This has been a George Washington team that, with regards to rebound percentage, are hovering about 152nd in all of college basketball. Meanwhile, you've got a Rhode Island team that's hovering more around about 101st. For Rhode Island, you just have so many different options for the team. David Fuchs has been your main guy, being able to chip in there about 6.5 to 7 rebounds per game, but you've got Sebastian Thomas, who's been one of the more versatile mid-major players in the country. 18.5 points, 6.5 assists, 2.2 steals, shoots 37% from three-point range. David Green chips in there 6 boards, 15 points. He shoots 42.5% from three-point range. Again, do I think that this is going to be tumbling downward a little bit? Sure, but Javonte Brown, the true 7-footer, giving you 7 boards and 2 blocks. That's not going to be going into a funk. This has been a Rhode Island team that's done a really good job of guarding the perimeter as well. They're a top 35 team in terms of opponents' three-point shooting percentage, and they're doing a nice job finding a way of getting to the free throw line. They're a top 10 team in the country in terms of fouls forced on a per possession basis, as they're a top 5 team in the country in terms of just total free throws per game as well. And this is a George Washington team that they do a nice job of not putting teams on the free throw line. They are a top 75 team in terms of fewest fouls on a per possession basis, and they've got a little bit more depth than I was expecting because prior to the start of the season, they did lose Garrett Johnson due to an injury, but you've had a pair of guys in Gerald Drumgoole along with Aaron Buchanan really leading the backcourt, giving you combined about 29.5 points per game, and Drumgoole shoots 38.5% from 3, and Trey Autry shooting about 43.5% from 3, while Christian Jones, he contributes 44% three-point shooting. Both of these guys have been able to give you between 8.5 to 9 points per contest, but when it comes down to it, for the George Washington team, it is a unit that has been giving up a little bit too much on the offensive glass as well, while they generate a few second chances of their own. That's been a little bit rough as well, and it has been a George Washington team that, let's call it what it is. They did play a little bit more of a soft non-conference schedule. Not that Rhode Island was necessarily playing monsters of the Midway, but they did get a few games against the likes of Providence, so I do like this spot for Rhode Island. I do think that this is going to be a tough road test for George Washington. I did set my total at 152. At their core, George Washington is actually a relatively up-tempo team, and we've seen this Rhode Island team play with quite a bit of pace right now. In terms of total possessions per game, Rhode Island this far this season clocking in 58th in all of college basketball. So circumstance where I'm going to be willing to lay with Rhode Island with regards to this total. Right now seeing that at a 151 in on the over as well. 685, 686 on the betting board. Charlotte is going to be playing us Florida Atlantic. Florida Atlantic is a road favorite of 6 to 6.5 points. It's on this game between 156 and 156.5. Set Florida Atlantic is a 4.5 point favorite. I'm going to be willing to take the points. Now you've got a pair of teams that have been, shall we say, less than efficient with regards to their defense, as the Charlotte team, in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, is 284th in all of college basketball, and then with this Florida Atlantic team, they're clocking in 220th in the country. Ironically enough, Florida Atlantic is actually giving up about 4 points fewer per 100 possessions on the road rather than at home, but this is really going to become a tempo battle. For Florida Atlantic, this is one of the teams that just absolutely loves to run it and gun it. 10th in the country in terms of total possessions per game. If you take a look at them in a road or neutral court setting, that actually goes up to the top 6 in all of college basketball. Meanwhile, Charlotte is one of the most low and slow teams that you're going to find. They are well outside the top 275 in terms of their total possessions per game, so I do think that things get slowed down just a skosh. I'm going to be willing to take a shot on the under. I did set my total at a 154.5. For Charlotte, it's also big that they've got Giancarlo Rosado back in the fold as well. He's actually been their main facilitator when he's been out there, right around about 6'7" or so. He's able to dole out 3.5 to 4 assists per game. He's been able to give the team 6+ boards. He's able to give you a double-figure amount of points. Do have to like that. And then Robert Briswell. He stands 6'7" or so. He shoots 42.5% for 3, 12.5 points per contest. He's done a nice job there. Well, Nick Graves throws in there 3 assists, 17.5 points per game for a Charlotte team that's done a really good job of being able to protect the ball. Even though they do play super slow, they're still a top 50 team in terms of fewest turnovers on a per possession basis, as they only turn the ball over 9 times per contest. Now, they're not going to generate a whole heck of a lot of turnovers, but I mean, that's really all Florida Atlantic has been able to do on defense. They've been able to generate turnovers. They don't do necessarily a great job of being able to guard the arc. They don't really do a great job on the interior either, so I do think that that's going to keep this Charlotte team relatively lively in this one. Now, it is a Florida Atlantic team that has been solid with regards to outside shooting. Not going to call it amazing, but they do shoot 36% from three-point range on the road. Charlotte has had their difficulties in terms of being able to guard the arc themselves, as you do have for this Florida Atlantic team really a holes greater than some of its parts approach. You don't really have anyone other than Caleb Glenn giving you north of 12 points per contest. He throws in there 12.5 points, 4.5 rebounds per game, but you've got 7 different guys that give you at least 7.2 points per contest. I like what I've been seeing out of Kai Tandy, who's been able to give you about 38.5% three-point shooting, throws in their 9 points per contest. Trey Carroll gives you about 11.5 points per game, and then Baba Miller, down low, 1.7 blocks. He's been able to up his range to be able to give you some three-point shooting at about 6'10" as well, at about 36%. So that's going to be a little bit difficult for Charlotte to be able to match up with. But for Florida Atlantic, we have been seeing this defense just be hit or miss all season long. For Charlotte, it does feel like they're starting to round into form a little bit more. In regulation, they've given up fewer than 72 points in 2 of their last 4 games. The other 2 games were against Tulane and Charleston, 2 teams that traditionally go a little bit more up-tempo. So I do think that Charlotte is going to be able to get things calmed down. I think that their ability to be able to protect the ball going to allow them to be able to get that slower tempo and to be able to stay in this game. I set my line at 4.5. I'm going to be willing to take the points with Charlotte and did set my total 154.5. I'm also in on this total under 687, 688 on the betting board. This is another game that I wrote up. Temple, we give our own to Lane Kiffin. Go Owls. They are going to be on the road against East Carolina. East Carolina is a favorite of 3 points. Dawn's game is 146.5. Wrote up the under. I set my total 139.5. You've got a pair of teams that have been well outside the top 100 in terms of points scored on a per possession basis, and East Carolina has been one of the more paltry three-point shooting teams in all of college basketball. You do have R.J. Felton, who's a two-adult guy with 17 points, 6.5 boards, steal and a half, 2.5 assists per contest, but he headlines a team that's right now shooting 27.7% from three-point range. That is outside the top 325 in all of college basketball. They do a relatively solid job on the glass by committee, as Felton, along with also C.J. Walker, has been able to supply the team with 16.5 points per contest. Jordan Riley, all these guys have been able to give you at least 6.2 rebounds per game. You've been able to get some mixing and shaking as well out of just Shane Woodyard, who I like. He's been able to give you about 5 points, 4.5 rebounds per game. Does shoot 50% from 3, albeit on a small amount of threes, but he throws in there a block, a steal per contest, so he's a little bit of a do-it-all gadget guy. And for Temple, I just have been fading this offense a little bit more because I haven't found a main point guard. You don't have a single guy that gives you really north of 2.3 assists per contest. Jamal Mashburn Jr., a nice headline scorer, 20.5 points, shooting 43.5% from three-point range, but I saw named Jamal Mashburn Jr. on the team shoot about 31.5% from three-point range. You've been able to get a little bit of something in terms of facilitation with a bit over 2 assists, 5 boards, 9 points per game out of Conte Berry, who at 6'4", he's been able to give you some nice versatility. And Temple, not bad on the glass. You've got Steve Settle, who's able to give you about 7 boards per contest. You've been able to have about 5 rebounds out of Berry, which I mentioned. Elijah Gray has been able to chip in there about 4 boards coming in from Fordham, so they've been able to do a relatively okay job there. And Temple has really upped their tempo a little bit more as well. This is now a team that ranks in the top 100 in terms of total possessions per game, but neither of these teams really generate a whole heck of a lot of turnovers, but neither of these teams really do a lot in terms of being able to give you a second chance opportunity as well. With the Temple team, just a lot of one-and-done possessions, despite what Settle is able to give you. This is a Temple team that is right now about 223rd in the country with regards to offensive rebound percentage. East Carolina, they're right now checking in more in the neighborhood about 38th, but have not been able to make a lot out of those opportunities with their poor three-point shooting as well. So you do have your question marks there. I do think that East Carolina going to be able to hold in this game with the way that they do at the glass, but in the end, I do think that Temple just has a little bit more. They've got Lynn Greer coming back in the fold, who was a main point guard when he was over at St. Joe's, along with his time over at Duquesne as well. And again, I just think that this three-point shooting is just absolutely awful for East Carolina, which makes them an unbackable side. I actually wrote up the under, but I could have went either way here because I feel like Temple should be the favorite in this spot. I've been liking what I've been seeing of them a little bit more recently, as they've been able to go on a 4 out of 5 game win streak. As Davidson, they were able to knock them off their lone loss game at home to Rhode Island by 6 points, relatively understandable. Meanwhile, it's an East Carolina team that's really hit the skids recently, losing 4 out of the last 5 games. So I do like Temple outright on the money line. And with regards to my write-up, I wrote up the under as well, so my total more around a 139.5. 689, 690 on the betting board. Another game that I wrote up, Furman is on the road against the Citadel, and the Citadel does find themselves as 14-point home underdogs. So this game between 137.5 to a 138.5. Wrote up the under. I set my total at a 128.5. I made Furman the 18.5 point favorite. This Citadel team is just not good, to say the least. The Citadel is playing at a really low tempo. They're outside the top 275 in terms of total possessions per game, but they're about 324th in the country in terms of points scored per possession. Brody Fox has been solid. He's been able to give you 16.5 points per game, but he really doesn't pop it from three-point range, and really nobody for the Citadel does. They are currently shooting 30.4% from 3 and 58.4% at the free throw line with 13.5 turnovers turnovers per game, all while playing super low tempo. That is not great to say the least. You've had Zola Abisi down low be able to give you about 6.5, 7 rebounds per game, so he's been able to do a nice solid job there, and you don't necessarily get a lot of scoring out of Paxton Davidson, but he does throw in there about 3 assists per game, so he's been able to do an okay job giving this offense a little bit of something. He did have a 23-point game against Central Arkansas a few weeks ago, but man, that Central Arkansas team is not good to say the least, and unbeknownst to a lot of people, Furman has actually really slowed things down and have really improved on the defensive side of things. Furman is now a top 110 team with regards to points allowed on a per possession basis. That was entering into Tuesday, and also with this bunch, they are outside the top 3 in terms of total possessions per game. You're used to this Furman team being a little bit more up-tempo, but they've slowed things down, and I do think that there's going to be a little bit of regression with PJ Harris and the way that he's made a bomb from three-point range. He's giving you 17 points, 3.5 assists, and he's currently shooting 46.5% from three as a whole. It is a Furman team that shoots about 36% from three-point range. You've had Cooper Bowser, Long Garrett Hine be your main men down low. They give you about 8.5 points per game apiece, between 4.5 to 5 rebounds per game, and then Nick Anderson, who's come up from the non-D1 ranks, shoots 96.5% the free throw line, 36% from three. He's given the team 16-plus points in 3 of the last 4 games overall for the season, about 12 points per contest, and it is a Citadel team as well as inside the top 250 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis as well. They have given up at least 81 points in 4 of their last 5 games, but I do think that even if Furman gets to 80, the Citadel just not going to be able to do their part with regards to the total. For Furman, it was a little bit of a less than savory performance against UNC Greensboro, giving up north of 80 points there, but prior to that, they had given up fewer than 70 points in pretty much all but one of their games in the month of December, and they've given up fewer than 70 points in pretty much all but 3 of their games prior to that all season long, with the lone exceptions coming against Kansas, Belmont, and they also had a little bit of a strange game against Florida Gulf Coast. So do think that the Citadel going to be held down in this game. Rode up the under, and with Furman, I'm going to be willing to lay up to 18 points with them. 691, 692 on the betting board. East Tennessee State, it's a road face-off against Mercer. Mercer is a home underdog of 2 to 2.5 points. Tallest game is 152 to 152.5. And with Mercer, I did set them as an underdog of 5 points. I'm going to be willing to lay with Tennessee. East Tennessee State, I do think is going to be able to do a nice job of just hitting the glass in this one. For ETSU, they do a pretty solid job of being able to give themselves second chance opportunities. Top 50 team in the country in terms of percentage of their missed shots that result in an offensive rebound. And ETSU last year was one of your most dreadful teams from three-point range in all of college basketball. They were shooting less than 31% from three-point range. They've really done a good job of being able to up that, as Kamari Peterson, great name, he's been the main catalyst for this team. He's been able to supply the team with 16 points per contest. Now, can't go any further without mentioning the Boogie Man, John Buggs. He has transferred into a few different places, and every place that he goes, he's able to deliver some relatively good three-point shooting, as he's been able to supply this team this year with about 13.5 points. Throws in there a 42.5% three-point shooting percentage, but Peterson, 4.5 boards, 4.5 assists, 2.5 per contest with that 42% three-point shooting and 18 points per game. And Jaden Seymour at 6'7", 16.5 points, 6.5 boards. He shoots in the mid-30s from three-point range as well. Now, for ETSU, if you have trepidation laying this number, it's probably because they shoot 62% at the free throw line, less than savory, but you still have Karen Boyd down low, who gives you about a block, 9 points, 6 rebounds per game, so he's been able to do a nice job holding up there. And Kurt Lewis, a very highly touted junior college transfer, just still hasn't given this team too much of anything. 4.5 points per contest. He's gone back out there in the last few games, but just hasn't been able to play a lot of minutes, so he could be a little bit of an X factor in this game. And then for this Mercer unit, it has been a team that's been very up and down with regards to their overall play. It's a team that shoots about 34% from three-point range. That's right around about country average, but I just don't know how they're going to be able to match up on the glass. They rank just 254th in the country with regards to their overall rebound percentage, but do have to like what you're seeing out of Avon Robinson. He comes in from New Hampshire. He's supplied the team with 16 points, 5.5 assists, 4.5 rebounds per game. Throws in there 2 steals per contest as well. It's a bunch that does a relatively good job of being able to generate those turnovers, but at the same time, because they do such a good job of generating those turnovers, they also leave themselves open to a lot of open threes as well. They're about 237th in the country in terms of opponents' three-point shooting percentage, so they are one of those teams that very much loves to gamble for turnovers. Alex Holt down low has been able to give you about 7 boards, 12 points per contest, and you've had a few unexpected guys be able to jump out and give this team some production as well. You've been able to have Angel Montas Jr. come in, give this team about 10.5 points per contest, has been one of their better three-point shooters at about 39.5% from three-point, but it's an ETSU team that does a relatively good job of being able to take care of the ball for Mercer, about 108th in the country in terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis, and they're forcing fewer turnovers per possession at home rather than on the road. I do think that ETSU does a good good job on the glass, finds a way to get the job done, set them as a 5-point favorite, so going to be willing to lay it with ETSU, and I'm going to be willing to take a shot on the under. Semi-total 151, ETSU, still a top 150 team in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. 693, 694 on the betting board. It is Wofford, and they are going to be playing us Western Carolina. Western Carolina is an underdog of 14.5 points total on this game, between 144.5 to a 145, and set Wofford as a 13.5 point favorite at 14 plus. Going to be willing to take the points with Western Carolina. This is a Wofford team that they're a relatively rough defense. They've been getting a little bit better recently. They've been playing better on their home floor, but that said, they are outside the top 275 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. Now, they get to go up against a Western Carolina team that they just have not been able to take care of the ball to save their lives. They're in the bottom 8 nationally in terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis, and they really don't have a lot of savory elements with regards to their offense, to say the least. That said, you take a look on the flip side for this Wofford team, and they just haven't been the same 3-point shooting team that I expected them to be this year. They had Chase Comer decide that he was going to leave the program before the start of the season. That was a little bit less than tremendous for them, as he was a 50% 3-point shooter, and overall, the team is shooting about 32% from distance outside the top 260 nationally. Now, Kyle Orfiowicz should be able to control things down low, 11 points, 10 rebounds per game, but you need to get a little bit more out of this backcourt play as well, because it is a Wofford team that they turn the ball over about 11.5 times per contest. Not great, not terrible with regards to their overall tempo, but Jackson Sevillas, he's giving you about 8.5 points. He throws in there only about 3 boards and assists per contest, and Corey Tripp is left to do a little bit of everything in the backcourt. 13.5 points, north of 3.5 boards, 3.5 assists per contest. Now, with this Western Carolina team, you could use a little bit more help for Court Stansbury in the backcourt. He's been able to give you about 11 points per contest, and things have been livening up a little bit for them down low. Bernard Polite has been able to give you 7.5 rebounds per game. You've got Bernard Collins, a 6'10" big man that's been able to give you about 4.5 boards. He's been a relatively good rim protector, but this has been a Western Carolina team that has been playing super up-tempo. They're in the top 40 in terms of total possessions per game. They're just not making a lot out of them, and they are a team that's outside the top 200 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. Meanwhile, you've got a Wofford team that they're back to playing super duper slow. They're about 349th in the country in terms of total possessions per game. I just don't think you get enough, shall we say, clean possessions to be able to get an over in this spot. Did semi-total at 143.5 as a result. So even though both of these seems a little bit less than savory with their defense, I'm going to be willing to take 14 plus here with Western Carolina and on this little under. 695, 696 on the betting board. Indiana plays USC. USC is a 6.5 to a 7-point underdog. Total on this game is 149 to 149.5. I did say USC as an underdog of 7.5 points, so willing to lay up to 7 with Indiana. Do think that the travel is going to be very, very rough for USC, and I like what I'm seeing out of USC recently. It was a little bit less than savory for them over the weekend, but prior to that, 4 blowout wins, 4 covers, so they've been able to do a great job on that front, but for USC, I just don't know how they're going to be able to match up on the glass with Indiana. You've got Malik Renew, who's been able to really renew his sense of confidence. Down low, he's been able to give the team 5 boards, 2.5 assists, 14 points per contest. Mackenzie Mbakbo shoots north of 36% from 3-point range. He throws in there 11 plus points, 5 plus rebounds per game. It's an Indiana team that is 35th in the country with regards to rebound percentage. Obviously, Umar Bello being the main headliner for the team, 12 plus points, 9 plus boards, overall block and a half per contest, while St. Thomas has been also versatile for this USC team. A USC team, though, that right now, if you're looking at their rebound percentage, right around about 192nd in the country, falls well outside the top 225 on the road. But St. Thomas, stealing half, 6 boards, 4.5 assists, right around about 9.5 points per game. So you've got good versatility there. And for USC, the outside shooting has been able to improve with Chibuzo Agbo being able to find his form. He's up to about 13 points and 39% 3-point shooting. And you've had in and out of the lineup a few different guys for the team. The main one being Terrence Williams, who was playing over at Michigan last season, 10.5 points per contest out of him. But we've had him in and out of the fold, and if he does play in this game, might be a little bit hampered and limited. While Josh Cohen, only 2.5 rebounds per game. Just need a little bit more there. Like Desmond Claude giving you about 4 assists per contest to be able to help facilitate the offense. And it is a USC team that they only turn the ball over about 10.5 to 11 times per contest, but they don't force a lot of turnovers themselves, and that's a big kryptonite for this Indiana team. It is an Indiana team that shoots in the low to mid-30s from 3-point range with this Indiana bunch as well. They have been turning the ball over darn near 13 times per contest. Miles Rice still being able to give you double figures, but haven't necessarily been able to get a lot out of guys like Goody and company from 3-point range. But despite that, I do think that this is going to be a bunch in Indiana that wins from within. Did semi-line at a 7.5. I'm going to be willing to lay it in Indiana. Cranking up their tempo a little bit more, but USC has actually dialed it back a little bit more this season. They are well outside the top 150 in terms of total possessions per game, and I do think that with the USC going to be bottled up quite a bit down low as well. So semi-total 147.5 in on the under, and I'm going to be willing to lay with Indiana. 697, 698 on the betting board. 4. Bradley is playing us to Drake, and the Drake does find themselves as a 2.5-point underdog. Total on this game, 125.5 to 126. I did set Bradley as 4.5-point favorite. I'm going to be willing to lay the number for Drake. They've lost back-to-back games after such a tremendous start to the season, but I don't think that's going to be getting a lot easier for them moving forward. They now have to face off against a Bradley team that is number 1 in all of college basketball with regards to their three-point shooting percentage. Bradley does a relatively solid job on the defensive side of things as well. In the top 120 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, Bradley not necessarily going to generate the same amount of turnovers as Drake is right now 21st in the country in terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis, but with Drake, a lot of that has been coming at home. Drake is number 5 in the country in terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis at home. When they hit the road, they are well outside the top 75. This is a veteran Bradley team that has so many good guards in the backcourt that I think it's going to be a little bit hard for them to match up. Now, this is a Drake team that is very well coached. They've got a guy in Bennett Sturts who's able to do it all. 17 plus points, 6 plus boards, 4.5 assists per game, and Daniel Abreu at 6'6" doesn't necessarily give you like a ton of rebounding with about 3.5 boards, but 12 points, shoots about 33% from 3-point range. This Drake team really doesn't take a lot of threes either. They're one of the lowest percentage of field goal attempts that come from 3-point range teams in the country, with Mitch Mascari being your main 3-point shooter, 47% 3-point shooter, 11.5 points per contest. It is a Drake team that they turn the ball over about 12 times per contest. When you're outside the top 300 in terms of total possessions per game, that's a few too many, and you've got Zeke Montgomery, Duke Dean, who've been able to combine for about 29 points per contest, 4 assists per game out of Duke Dean, and Zeke Montgomery is right now shooting 48.5% from 3-point range, and I do think that there's going to be a bit of regression with this 3-point shooting for Bradley, as right now they are shooting 43.1% as a collective. That is number 1 in all of college basketball, and you do have a Drake team in which their road 3-point shooting defense has traveled a little bit better than their turnovers force, as Drake is allowing opponents to shoot about 34% from 3-point range on the road. Overall, that's pretty solid, and this is a Bradley team that they themselves are a top 60 team with regards to their 3-point shooting defense. I do think that 7'1" Ahmet Janovic, who gives you about 3.5 rebounds per game, going to be able to have himself a nice day down low, and then when you're able to throw in there guys like Adarius Hannah, Christian Davis, that give you about a combined 22.5 to 23 points per contest. I do think that depth is going to be a little bit too much for Drake to overcome, and I do think that this game has a propensity for some late game following. You've got a Bradley team that is a little bit more mid-tempo. Drake, one of the slower teams in all of college basketball. Meanwhile, Bradley, they're about 200th in the country in terms of total possessions per game, so somebody total 126.5, you're at the 125.5, 126 in on the over, and I'm willing to lay up to 4 with Bradley. 699, 700 on the betting board. Northern Iowa plays us to Murray State, and Murray State does find themselves as an underdog of 5.5 points. So on this game, it is 138, and with Murray State, I did set them as an underdog of 7 points. I'm going to be willing to lay the number. Now, the one thing that Murray State has been able to do a really good job of is being able to guard the 3-point line, as Murray State is allowing opponents to shoot well less than 31% from 3-point range. As a matter of fact, in terms of a road/neutral court environment, they're a top 30 team with regards to opponents' 3-point shooting percentage at 29.7%, so they've done a nice job with that regard. And this has been a Northern Iowa team that has just absolutely bombed it from 3-point range. They are shooting north of 40% as a collective in their home games, shooting 42% from 3-point range when they are at home, as State and Anderson has been a do-it-all, nice, versatile piece, 14.5 points, 6.5 boards per contest. But Leon Bond, who comes on over from Virginia, he's been able to give you about 5 boards, throws in their seal per contest, shoots 40% from 3-point range. It's a Northern Iowa team that has really dialed back their tempo. They're outside the top 300 in terms of total possessions per game. Murray State, towards the beginning part of the season, they were playing a little bit more up-tempo, but we've seen that defense really be able to take hold recently as well. They have given up 71 points or fewer in regulation in 4 of their last 5 games. That Charlotte game went to double overtime, so regulation and regulation only on that one. Meanwhile, it's a Northern Iowa team that they've been a little bit more hit or miss with regards to their defense. 70 plus points allowed in 4 of their last 5 games, but I do think that they're going to be able to put the clamps down on a Murray State team that has been hit or miss with regards to their 3-point shooting. They are shooting 36.5% as a collective, and Jacoby Wood has been able to give you 37.5% 3-point shooting, 5 assists, 14 points per contest, and for Murray State as a whole, is greater than the sum of its parts rebounding approach. AJ Ferguson along Kyron Lindsey have been able to combine for 10 rebounds per game. Lindsey is able to give you about a block and a half per contest down low as well, so I've been liking what I've been seeing there. But it has been a Murray State team that when they've hit the road, things have been just a little bit more, shall we say, tumultuous with their 3-point shooting. They're only shooting about 33.5% from the outside. This is a Northern Iowa team that is functional with the way that they are able to generate turnovers. They're not necessarily the most amazing team in the world, but this is a Northern Iowa team that, along with their 3-point shooting being a whole lot better at home, their defense is a whole lot better at home as well, giving up about 9.3 points fewer per 100 possessions when they are in their friendly confines rather than when they are on the road. And for Murray State, only about 155th in the country in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, despite the fact that they've done a good job of being able to guard the perimeter. Guys like Nick Ellington have taken a little bit of a step back down low, and I do think that that's going to be enough for Northern Iowa to be able to get the job done, especially with the versatility of 6'11" Jacob Hudson, who's been able to give you 12.5 points, shoots 38% from three-point range, and it's a Northern Iowa team that have their top 4 scorers, all but one of them shoot at least 37.8% from three-point range. I do think that they find a way to get the job done here with their depth. I did set my line at a 7. I'm going to be willing to lay with Northern Iowa. Do think that the defense rounds into form a little bit more here, but again, Northern Iowa has been so efficient at home, and defense has taken a tad bit of a setback. I did set my total at 139. So I'm in on the over, and I'm going to be willing to lay it here with Northern Iowa. 701, 702 on the betting board. Another game I wrote up as Alabama, they hit the road. They're facing off against South Carolina, and South Carolina find themselves as a home underdog, mostly at 10 across the board. We've seen 1 or 2 straight 10.5s pop up as well. Total on this game, you're getting it between a 156 to a 157. I think this is a good matchup for South Carolina. I was willing to write up the points. I did set this as an 8.5 point line, but with this South Carolina unit, they do a nice job of being able to take away the three-point shot. They are 35th in the country in terms of opponents' fewest amount of points that come from three-point range in terms of their percentage of points that come from made threes. And Alabama, they take 49.8% of their field goals from three-point range. That ranks in the top 15 in all of college basketball. Alabama has been able to have some nice versatility out of Grant Nelson thus far, 13 points, 8.5 rebounds per game. And I do think that Alabama is going to see a rise with their three-point shooting percentage. Right now it's at 31.6%. But how much of a rise is a question, because they've gotten back Chris Youngblood. He looks to be still affected by the injury. He had 9 points, 8 rebounds in the last game against Oklahoma, but he's only shooting about 24.5% from three-point range each out of the last 3 seasons and shot north of 40% from 3, but he's traditionally a little bit of a slow starter from three-point range. Mark Sears, he's only shooting about 33% from the outside, 18.5 points per game, and this has been a South Carolina team that has been solid with their three-point shooting defense. I'm not going to call it amazing, but you know what? They're allowing opponents to shoot about 31.5% from three-point range. That's pretty darn passable. It's a South Carolina team that is a top 90 team with regards to rebound rate as well, as I do think that Colin Murray Boyles is going to be able to keep them lively in this one. Chips in there, block and a half, steal and a half, 9.5 rebounds, north of 15 points per game. Love his overall versatility, and the guards have been able to come along for the ride, as well as you've got Jamari Thomas, who had a little bit of a rough start to the season, but now giving you 3.5 assists, steal and a half per contest, shooting 36.5% from 3. Jacoby Scooby Wright has been able to give you about 9 points and shoots in the high 30s from three-point range as well. In South Carolina, they turn the ball over about 11.5 times per contest. They don't do a whole heck of a lot great. They don't do a whole heck of a lot terrible, but Alabama is also a team that's outside the top 175 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis in games played away from home. South Carolina coming off of getting completely bludgeoned by Mississippi State, but other than that, their offense has actually been very rock solid, scoring 69 plus points in all but 1 out of their last 13 games, with the lone exception being that last game. So I do think that South Carolina going to be able to hold their own from a scoring standpoint in this game. I said my total 164.5. Alabama, top 25 team in the country. They really crank things up tempo, and I think that they are going to be able to get their up tempo style in this one, but I do think that double figures a little bit too far here. So taking the points with South Carolina, and I'm in on the over. 703, 704 on the betting board. Arkansas plays also Ole Miss, and Ole Miss is right now find themselves as an underdog of 3 points here. Total on this game, going to be getting it at a 148, and I'm with our good friend Ryan McIntyre. I'm going to be willing to lay with Arkansas. I did set them as a 6-point favorite for Ole Miss. This team has been pretty explosive from three-point range. You've had Matthew Morrell be in and out of the lineup, but he's starting to find his sea legs, giving you 12 points per contest. Still only shooting about 29.5% from three-point range, but overall it is a unit for Ole Miss that is shooting about 35.5% from 3. Love the way that they protect the ball. They're a top 10 team in all of college basketball with regards to percentage of possessions that end in a turnover. They're also about 200th in the country with regards to their rebound percentage, though, and I think that that's going to be an issue going against an Arkansas team that they're only about 90 with this regard, but I think that that's going to be going northward because they were dealing with injuries to Trevon Brazile along Jonas Adu to begin the season. Like, if you look at these two guys' numbers, they're both only giving you about 6 to 7 points per contest. They combine for about 9 rebounds, and they do give you 3 blocks per contest, but I mean, ever since they've been able to get fully healthy, these guys have looked completely different. For Trevon Brazile, he's been able to chip in their 9+ points in 4 of the team's last 5 games. For Jonas Adu, really had a nice coming out party in that game against Michigan. He's been able to supply this team with 6+ points in 4 of the last 5 games as well. He's been able to give you multiple blocks in 4 of the last 5 games as well. And then Boogie Fland has been boogieing around the backcourt with 2 steals, 6 assists, shoots about 38% from three-point range. And DJ Wagner, I really think, is the key to this team because he was a former top 10 recruit that really wasn't living up to his billing to start out with, but now has been able to just unlock himself a little bit more. Double-figure amount of points in 4 of the last 5 games. Did have a few too many turnovers in that game against Tennessee, but overall, he's been able to do a nice job helping out an offense that has been able to get past the 75-point plateau in all but one out of their last, I believe now, 9 or so games. That game against Tennessee was the lone exception. Being able to have Big Z be able to give you about 2 blocks per contest and nice versatility as well. I think he's going to take it out of an Ole Miss team that has Sean Padula doing a nice job running the point guard spot. 14 points, 3.5 assists, and then you get Jalen Murray giving you those 4 assists, 12.5 points. Well, he shoots about 43.5% from 3-point range. So do you think that you're going to be able to get some points up on the board in this game? I did set my total at a 154. It is an Ole Miss team that is going to give you a lot of second and third chances. Arkansas looking to run a little bit more tempo as well. So I feel like this total is too low. I'm in on the over, and I'm going to be willing to lay it with Arkansas. Set them as a 6-point favorite. 7-5, 7-6 on the betting board. St. Joe's hits the road to face off against Duquesne. And Duquesne is a underdog at home of anywhere between 2.5 to 3 points. So on this game between 133.5 to 134. And I did set St. Joe's as a favorite of 4.5 points. I'm going to be willing to lay the number for Duquesne. They have looked much better in the last few games. It's sort of a see it to believe it sort of thing with Duquesne, though. And for St. Joe's, I believe that they've got more talent than what they've shown thus far this season. I think that there should be some positivity coming for their 3-point shooting. You've got Eric Reynolds and Xavier Brown combining to shoot about 30% from 3-point range. They've been able to give you a combined 31 points per contest between the two of them. About 8 assists, 2.5 steals per contest as well. But it's been Rasheer Fleming who's really stood out to be a block and a half, a steal and a half, 9 boards, 16 points per game while shooting 41% from 3-point range. For a St. Joe's team that they do turn the ball over about 12 times per contest. With regards to St. Joe's defense, it's solid. It's not necessarily great. They're right around about the top 100, top 125 in terms of pretty much all of these defensive metrics for St. Joe's. They've been able to do a pretty rock solid job on glass as well, despite the fact that Fleming has been really your lone guy that has been able to step up with that regard. For St. Joe's, they do rank with regards to their rebound percentage more than they neighbor at about 111th, but on the road, they're more of a top 100 team with that regard, and this has been a Duquesne unit that has had a tough time just being able to find offense in general. They do shoot about 34.5% from 3-point range, but also shoot 63% at the free throw line. They've been without for quite some time Jake D. Michelle, who was their number 2 scorer for the first month or so of the season. We have not seen him in quite a while. Trey Dinkins has given you about 2.5 assists, 10.5 points per contest, while Kamir Rozier has been your main facilitator with about 3.5 assists, 1.2 steals per contest. And he and Jashawn Corbett, your top scorer at 11 points per contest, have both been able to shoot about 34.5% from 3-point range. But again, with this Duquesne team, just not a lot has come easy for them. They've been playing a very low-tempo style. They're outside the top 260 in terms of total possessions per game. And with Duquesne, they've actually been a really good interior defense. They're a top 30 team in all of college basketball with regards to opponents' 2-point shooting percentage, but they have been having a little bit of a tough time being able to guard around the perimeter as well. You can tell that this backcourt is just taking quite a bit of a setback from the season ago as Duquesne, in terms of opponents' 3-point shooting percentage, 307th in all of college basketball. So do you think that St. Joe's heats up a little bit from 3-point range, finds a way to be able to get the job done? Did somebody total 134.5. I do think that St. Joe's gets heated up a little bit from 3-point range, and I do think that this is going to be a game that's going to be close enough for some late game fouling, and this has been a St. Joe's team that has gotten past the 75-point barrier for their last 5 games. Meanwhile, credit where it's due for Duquesne. They've been able to get to at least 67 points in now each of their last 4 games, so I'm in on the over, and I'm willing to lay it with St. Joe's. 7-7, 7-8 on the betting board. VCU plays close to Fordham, and Fordham is an 18 to an 18.5 point dog. Total on this game, 144 to 144.5. Did somebody total 137.5. I'm in on the under. Fordham has been a top 100 team in terms of total possessions per game, but they've always been a team that's hung their head a little bit more on the defensive side of things. For Fordham, it's been really bad in terms of being able to guard the perimeter. 328th in the country in terms of opponents' 3-point shooting percentage. Now, they do atone for that a little bit with the way that they've been able to guard inside. You still have Abdul Sambilia, who's able to give you about 5 boards, a block and a half per contest. So I like what they bring to the table there. Fordham, more around about 220th in the country in terms of opponents' 2-point shooting percentage. But I do think that VCU should be able to go out there and base them, though. Could only set my number at a 17.5 because VCU is outside the top 100 in terms of points scored on a per possession basis. I like what they're able to get out of the backcourt. Philip Russell, 12.5 points, 2.5 assists, right now shooting 39.5% from 3, but team shoots 32% from 3. They turn the ball over 12 times per contest. That's a little bit of a lower tempo team. It's really been the defense that this VCU team has really been able to show off, as for VCU, one of the top 3-point shooting defenses in all of college basketball, and then along the interior as well, which is where Fordham is going to need to get a lot of their points. They are 22nd in the country in terms of opponents' 2-point shooting percentage. If you just look at the points allowed on a per possession basis for VCU, number 17 in all of college basketball, but you look at the home numbers and the home numbers only, they're currently clocking in the top 10 in all of college basketball. A big reason why I'm going to be in on this total under. And for Fordham, Jackie Johnson has been able to give you 16 plus points per contest, shoots in the high 30s from 3-point range. Who else is going to be able to help him out? This team is 227th in the country in terms of points scored on a per possession basis. Down low, you've been able to get a little bit more out of Ramad Dean. He's been able to give you 5.5 boards. He throws in there 8 plus points per contest, so has been able to do a solid job. I'll be able to help with that regard. And then you've had Jasaf Meter also be able to give you about 10 points, 3.5 assists per game, but 13.5 turnovers per game for this Fordham team that just has a collective about 34.3% from 3-point range. I do think that VCU going to be able to get the job done in this one. Again, just feel like this has gone a hair too far, especially with a Fordham team that has been able to give you a little bit more offensively recently. They've been able to break the 80-point plateau throughout their last 5 games, but this is a VCU team that, really other than those games against New Mexico along St. Bonaventure, they've been holding teams at 70 or fewer on the regular, and I do think that they slow this game down. So my total at a 137.5 and on the under 18 plus. That is my buy point on Fordham. 709, 710 on the betting board. It is UW Milwaukee on the road against Fort Wayne. Fort Wayne is a favorite of 3 points. So on this game, 157 after a 158. Did set my total at 160. I am in on the over. You've got a pair of teams that are relatively up-tempo. I'm not going to call them teams that are playing at warp speed or anything like that, but it's a UW Milwaukee team that's about 146th in the country in terms of total possessions per game. This Fort Wayne team, they're more around about 156th, but this Fort Wayne team has just been absolutely executing on offense, while UW Milwaukee, one of the best teams in all of college basketball, to be able to give you second chance opportunities, a top 55 team in terms of percentage of missed shots that result in an offensive rebound. Big reason why Michael Stillwell, he's in the top 10 in all of college basketball with regards to rebounds per game. He's been able to pull in there north of 11 per contest for this UW Milwaukee team. That's about 130th in the country in terms of points scored on a per possession basis. It's been a little bit more hit or miss for them on defense, and this is a Fort Wayne team that they certainly do gamble for turnovers. They're a top 75 team in the country with regards to percentage of possessions that end in a turnover. That said, this is a team that when they don't get one of those turnovers, they leave themselves wide open from 3-point range, as this is a Fort Wayne team that's allowing teams to shoot from 3-point range right in that neighborhood about 35.2%. That's 265th in all of college basketball. UW Milwaukee, they've been allowing a few open threes as well. About 34.5% from 3-point range is what opponents are shooting in their road games, and it's a big reason why I do think that Fort Wayne gets the job done. Set them as a 4-point favorite. Jalen Jackson has been your main scorer, give you about 19 points per contest. Rasheed Bell, actually, he used to play in the state of Wisconsin at the lone D2 University there in UW Parkside. 13 points, 4 assists per contest, and for Fort Wayne, they're a top 10 team, and in terms of taking care of the ball, only about 8.9 turnovers per contest. While they do generate those turnovers themselves, Cade Hadno has been able to give you about 10 points. He shoots 41% from 3-point range. Now, this Fort Wayne team is going to have a tough time on the glass. Eric Mulder is the only guy that gives you north of 4.7 rebounds per game. It's a Fort Wayne team that's outside the top 250 with regards to rebound rate. This is also a UW Milwaukee team, though, that they're only shooting 29.5% from 3-point range, and Fort Wayne can be really be undone with regards to their 3-point shooting defense, but you do have Themis Folks, Kintrell Pullian will be able to combine for about 29 points per contest. Folks is able to give you 5 assists, 1.5 steals per contest, but does turn the ball over about 3.5 times per contest, and this is a UW Milwaukee team outside the top 225 in terms of their ball security. They've turned the ball over about 13.5 times per contest, and very interesting with this UW Milwaukee team, they've actually been able to put the clamps down on defense recently. They've given up 65 points or fewer in now 3 of their last 4 games, but also a unit that has gotten to at least 88 points in 3 of their last 5 games as well. Meanwhile, this is a Fort Wayne team that they have certainly been giving it up on the defensive side of things themselves against D1 competition, because they played a game or 2 against non-D1 teams as well. They have now given up at least 76 points in all but 2 out of their last 8 games. Meanwhile, I believe that they have gotten to at least 75 points in all but 2 of those games as well. So I do think that you're going to get yourself a nice up and down game. Did set my total at a 160 in on the over. And for Fort Wayne, set them as a 4-point favorite, so going to be willing to lay up to 3.5 with them. 7-11, 7-12 on the betting board. Cleveland State hits the road face-off against Robert Morris, and Bobby Morris is a 2-point favorite in your total on this game. It is 138.5 to a 139, and Robert Morris, I said, as a 4.5-point favorite. I'm going to be willing to lay the number. For Cleveland State, they're just leaving too much to be desired on the offensive end. This has been a Cleveland State team that has been able to do a nice job of being able to generate some turnovers in terms of turnovers forced on a per-possession basis. They're a top 50 team in the country with Tevin Smith leading the way in terms of a scoring standpoint, steal and a half, 1.2 blocks, 14 points, only shooting about 22% from 3. For Cleveland State, the 3-point shooting is starting to come around. They're shooting about 32% from 3, and I think that's no coincidence that Abri Madiba, who was the the main point guard over at Coastal Carolina a few seasons ago. He's been able to find his sea legs, and that has led to a little bit of an offensive surge for this team, being able to generate at least 75 points in 4 of the last 5 games that he has played in, and he's given the team 7+ assists in 4 of his last 5 games as well. He's only giving you about 4 points per contest, but does a nice job being able to facilitate good, clean offense for a team that they do turn the ball over about 12 times per contest, but also for Cleveland State, you've been able to get right around about 7.5 rebounds per game out of Dylan Arnett. Reese Robinson has come in. He's been able to give the team right around about 5 boards per contest. As a freshman, that's actually been relatively impressive. 7+ rebounds in 3 of his last 5 games, but on the flip side, I do think that they're going to be outdone a little bit by the fact that Robert Morris has the versatility of Alvaro Foguerius. He comes in as a 6'9" combo player from Spain, 13 points, 11 boards, 3 assists. Well, he shoots about 31% from 3, and Robert Morris, they themselves, shoot below 32% from 3-point range. These are 2 teams that rank well outside the top 225 in terms of their 3-point shooting percentage, but it is a Robert Morris team that they've done a relatively solid job. I'll be able to guard the perimeter. They're allowing opponents to shoot about 32.5% from 3-point range. That's right around about country average for Cleveland State. They allow opponents to shoot more like 35% from 3-point range, so bit of an issue there. And then bringing back Cam Woods, I think, is just a big deal for this Robert Morris team because he's missed 5 games this year due to injury, but when he's been out there, he's been great. 4 assists, 2 steals, 14.5 points per game. It's a Robert Morris team that's not necessarily supreme in terms of generating turnovers, and they do turn the ball over themselves about 13.5 times per game, but I do think the fact that you just have a Cleveland State team that they allow way too many second and third chances in terms of defensive rebound percentage. They're right now clocking in outside the top 275 in all of college basketball. They allow opponents to grab 31.7% of their missed shots as an offensive rebound, allows Robert Morris to get the job done in a lower scoring game. I did set my total at a 134.5, so seeing the 138.5 to 139, and on the under, I'm a little up to 4 with Bobby Morris. Sub 13, sub 14 on the betting board. Miami is going to be playing us at Florida State. Florida State is an underdog of a point to a point and a half. The last game is between 154.5 to a 155. I said Florida State is the 2-point favorite. I like them outright on the money line. I need to see a win to believe it from this interim coaching staff right now over there at Miami because things are just an dysfunctional mess right now for them. They lose Jim Larinaga, their coach, right around about Christmas time. Nigel Pack has not played in about a month or so. Last time we saw him was in that game in New York City against Tennessee, and he's their main scorer. And without him, this team has just been completely lost in the wilderness. In their 5 games that they've had without Nigel Pack, they've won 1 game. That came against the Blue Wolves of Presbyterian, and they have allowed at least 75 points in every one of the games that he has not played in. Meanwhile, you've got a Florida State team that they themselves have been pretty darn solid with regards to their offense. They've gotten to at least 74 points in each of their last 5 games, albeit one of those games was because they went to overtime against NC State, but you've got Jameer Watkins, who I think is going to be the best player out there on the floor. 19 points, 4.5 boards, 3.5 per contest. Only shoots about 32% from 3, and this is a Florida State team that, as a whole, they shoot 33% from 3-point range. They leave a little bit of something to be desired there, and this has been a Miami team that overall this season, they've actually been a pretty efficient offensive team. In terms of points scored on a per possession basis, they're 32nd in all of college basketball. And if you just look at their home numbers and their home numbers only, they're a top 30 team with that regard as well. But I mean, they have been right around about 300th in the country in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. And this is a Florida State team that they do a really nice job of being able to generate turnovers. We have been noticing that Miami's had a tougher time being able to hold on to the ball with Nigel Pack being out of the fold. And I do think that Florida State and their overall pressure and having so much depth as well. It's not necessarily great depth, but I mean, it's depth regardless. They're 30th in the country in terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis. I think that that's going to undo this Miami team, especially without having Malik Ewan being able to give you about 7.5 rebounds per game for Florida State, though they're not necessarily the world's greatest rebound rate team. You've got Lynn Kidd down low for Miami, who's able to give you about 7.5 rebounds per game. Matthew Cleveland, do-it-all guy, 12.5 points, 4.5 boards. After a slow start to the year, he's now shooting about 44.5% from distance, but it's a Miami team that they also shoot about 32.5% from 3-point range. They've been much better at home rather than on the road, but again, those games came when Jim Larinaga was the coach. Now that you've got an interim coaching regime in here, less than savory to say the least, in my opinion, for Miami. So I did set my line at 2 with Florida State being the favorite. I like them outright on the money line. And I did set my total at 154. I do think that the turnover is going to be costly to the over. So like the under, I like Florida State on the money line. 715, 716 on the betting board. It's NC State playing us in Notre Dame. And old Notre Dame is a 2 to 2.5 point underdog. And your total on this game is 138.5. This is another game that I wrote up as I set Notre Dame as 1.5 point favorite. I like Notre Dame outright on the money line. Big reason why you get Marcus Burton back in the fold, and that is absolutely massive for this Notre Dame team. They were without him for about 7 or so games. He went down in that Las Vegas Invitational, what have you, but he returned in that game against North Carolina, and he looked rock solid. 23 minutes, 23 points. So you'll love to see that. Team lost the game outright 74-73, but covered that number. And for Notre Dame, this is still a team that does a really good job of being able to generate good looks from 3-point range. That's the hallmark of Micah Shrewsbury. Loco has been able to go. Loco Falco, 10 points, 3.5 assists, shooting 46% from three-point range. And for NC State, they just have not been a good team on the glass. Outside the top 230 with regards to their rebound rate, and then you've got Nikita Kostanatovsky, who's right now dealing with a little bit of an injury for Notre Dame. He was coming on strong with regards to his rebounding, was out in that game against North Carolina, so that does hurt them a little bit, but being able to have Brendan Shrewsbury give you 14 plus points per contest, shooting well from three-point range, Kiba Njai throwing in there about 5.5 rebounds per game. I do think that they should be able to do a good job down low against Ben Middlebrooks, who's able to give you about 5 or so rebounds per game, along with Brandon Huntley Hatfield. And for NC State, just not a lot of three-point shooting for the team. Marcus Hill was a 20-point per game scorer last year at Bowling Green, but shot less than 30% from three, shooting 23.5% from distance with 12.5 points per game. It's a team that at home is barely shooting above 30% from three-point range. Michael O'Connell has been able to give you 4 assists, 7 points per game, but when they made that big run in both the ACC and the NCAA tournament, he shot it really well from three, just 31% this season. NC State, to their credit, they do a nice job not turning it over. They only turn the ball over about 10 times per contest, and they generate a few turnovers on defense as well. Notre Dame not really going to be wrecking the apple cart, not really going to be forcing a lot of turnovers. That said, with this Notre Dame team, they've gotten past the 73-point plateau in each of their last 4 games. It's an NC State defense starting to take a little bit of a setback, and offense just has not been able to get going. This NC State team has been held below 70 points in 4 of their last 5 games. I do think that Notre Dame is able to do that here, and they're able to get the job done. I did set my line at a 1.5, Notre Dame being the favorite. I like them outright in the money line. I wrote that up, and I did set my total 137.5 here on the 138.5 and on the under. 717, 718 on the betting board. UMass plays us to Dayton, and Dayton does find themselves as a 9.5 point road favorite, seeing as high as a 10. Total on this game is 148 to 148.5. I set Dayton as a 10.5 point favorite. Willing to go up to 10, wouldn't want to go any further than a 10, but I'm going to be willing to lay it just because with this UMass team, they're going to give you a fight. We were talking about it with Ryan McIntyre of the Sports Gambling Podcast Network, but it's just not really a good team. I wish I could put it any other way, but you've got Jalen Curry along with Rashul Diggins, who are able to combine for about 26.5 points per game, and Curry's been able to give you 7.5 per contest. These two guys combine for about 7.5 assists per game. Curry shoots 32% from 3, and he's one of 2 guys that average north of 2.5 points per contest that shoot above 32.5% from 3. Like, it's rough for this team, to say the least. You've been able to get a little bit down low with Daniel Rivera, give you a steal, a block and a half, 7.5 rebounds per game, and Daniel Hankins-Sanford, when he's been out there, has been able to give you about 6.5 rebounds per game. Problem is, Hankins-Sanford has been in and out of the lineup due to injury. He's returned in the last 2 games, and in his last game had 6 rebounds against Richmond, so looks like he could be back in full force for this game, but that's still a rough ordeal to be going through. And this is a Dayton team that, while they might not be like monsters of the Midway down low or anything like that, they do a good job of not allowing a lot of second chances. 65th in the country with regards to their defensive rebound percentage. You've been able to get a lot of versatility and production out of Nate Santos. 14.5 points, 5.5 boards at 6'7", right now shooting 40.5% from three-point range. Dayton, much like last season, just one of the most efficient teams in all of college basketball with regards to their offense. In terms of points scored on a per possession basis, this is a Dayton team that clocks in the top 45 in all of college basketball. Defense has taken a little bit of a setback. They are outside the top 80 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, but Enoch Feeks right around about 1.8 steals, 7.5 boards, 13 points per contest, while Malachi Smith 5.8 assists at 2.2 turnovers per game. Dayton, slow and controlled team outside the top 330 in terms of total possessions per game, but only turned the ball over 9.8 times per game. Zed Key would like to see a little bit more rebounding out of him, but he's been able to give you a little bit over a block per contest as well. And Posh Alexander just feels like he's starting to find his role with his team a little bit more as well. His scoring is way down from what it has been in past years, but a combined 6 steals over the last 3 games has been a really nice defensive stopper. It's a big reason why the Seton team has been playing a little bit better defensively. Obviously, that George Washington game was a little bit of a setback for them, but I do think that with this Dayton bunch, way that they have given up 66 points or fewer in 3 of their last 5 games, including to both Cincinnati and Marquette, they're going to do a nice job just being able to tighten things up here against a UMass team that they're looking to play up tempo. I do think that UMass is going to be able to get a little bit more of their pace, but I think that's going to be a lot of dead possessions. Semi-total 146.5. I'm in on the under, and I'm willing to lay up to 10 with Dayton. 719, 720 on the betting board. Central Florida plays host to Colorado. Colorado's a 4.5 to a 5.5 point underdog. Total on this game is between 146 to 147, and I know that our good friend Ryan was talking about fading Colorado on the road. I'd be willing to do so if they could bring this down to closer to about a 4. Now that we've reached a 5 to a 5.5, I'm going to be willing to take the points with Colorado. I set my line at a 4.5. With Central Florida, they are now getting back Jalen Sellers. That's going to be big for this team as he was missing for the first half of the season. He was a double-figure scorer for the team 8 seasons ago. 2 years ago, when he was in the back, he was about a 44% three-point shooter. That pairs up very well with the fact that you've got Darius Johnson, Keyshawn Hall, Jordan Ivy Curry, who've been able to combine combined for 45 points between the two of them per contest. Johnson has been one of the best defensive players in the country as well, nearly 3 steals per contest. Still turning the ball for 3 times per game. That's a bit of an issue. And for Central Florida, they've been able to get them to shoot it really well from 3 at 44.5% from the outside. Really nobody else other than Sellers shooting above 35.5% from 3-point range, so they've really needed that shot in the arm. But for Colorado, big reason why I think that they remain lively in this game, they've got really nice versatility and size. Andre Iguodala stands right around 6'8", 11 points, 5 boards. He shoots about only 30% from 3, but Elijah Malone shoots in the mid-30s from 3-point range, stands 6'10", 11 points, 4 boards per contest. Love what these guys provide there. Now, it is a Colorado team that they need to clean up the turnovers. 14.5 turnovers per game. They themselves have been relatively solid at being able to generate turnovers. Both of these teams are good, but not great in terms of the way that they do generate their turnovers. In terms of Central Florida, in terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis, right around about 107th in all of college basketball. Colorado, they're clocking in more in the neighborhood about 190th. So both of these teams do an okay job being able to generate a few of those. But Trevor Baskin down low, he's been able to give you about 6.5 boards, 10 points, a little bit over a steal, and a block per contest. So love the this and that he's able to bring to the table for this Colorado team. Now, it is a Colorado team that, with regards to their defense, it has taken a little bit of a setback when they've been on the road rather than when they have been at home, but they've had a lot of moving pieces with regards to the Central Florida team as well. And I do think that Colorado could be able to step to the plate here, be able to hold in this game, as Central Florida well outside the top 75 now with regards to their rebound percentage. And the Central Florida team, despite the fact that they do generate a few turnovers, about 124th in the country in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. So I did set my total at a 146.5, along with taking the 5+ here with Colorado. I'm going to be willing to take the 147 under as well. 721, 722 on the betting board. Another game that I wrote up. Belmont is going to be playing us at Southern Illinois. At Southern Illinois, a 10.5 to an 11-point dog. Total on this game is between 155.5 to a 156, and I set my total at a 164. I'm in on the over. Belmont is just gunning it. They're in the top 40 in the country in terms of total possessions per game. At home, they've been a top 50 team with regards to points scored on a per possession basis, and they're going up against a bunch in Southern Illinois that is outside the top 275 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis and opponent's 3-point shooting percentage. So do think that for Belmont, they should be able to take it to Southern Illinois. I did set them as a 12-point favorite. I do think that Southern Illinois has been outside the top 255 in terms of points scored on a per possession basis. They're going to be able to find it a little bit more in this game. Belmont well outside the top 200 in terms of points allowed per possession, as you've got a pair of guys in Kendrick Davis Jr. along with Ali Abdu-Diba, who've been able to combine for 29 points. Between the two of them, 8.5 boards, 4 assists, 3.3 steals per game. And Davis does shoot about 34.5% from 3. Southern Illinois only shooting about 30.5% as a collective from 3-point range. Belmont outside the top 225 in the way that they guard the arc. So I do think that there should be some positivity coming for Southern Illinois in this game. Meanwhile, for Belmont, they've got a guy that I think is going to be unguardable for Southern Illinois in Jonathan Pierre. Was a part of that D2 Nova Southeastern team that won the national title 2 seasons ago. At 6'9", gives you 13.5 points on 39% 3-point shooting, nearly 4 assists, 7 rebounds per game. Tyler One-Blade continues to shoot right around about 47.5% from the outside, 11 points per contest, and got 6 different guys for Belmont that give you at least 9 points per contest. You've got, I believe now, 8 different guys that give you at least 5.5 points per game as well. They do a relatively solid job by committee of being able to give you some rebounding as well. Isaiah Walker is thrown in there, 2.5 assists. He's able to give you about 5 boards per contest as well. And then additionally, Carter Witt has been able to do a nice job just being able to dole out the ball. He's been able to give you about 12.5 points, throws in there a little bit over a steal, 5.5 boards, right around about 4.8 assists per contest, as well as Belmont. Typically is a team that gets bludgeoned on the glass. Not that they've been amazing or anything like that, but they're about 195th in the country with regards to their overall rebound percentage. Southern Illinois, they're more around about 160th, but that takes quite a bit of a dive when they're on the road. So I do think that Belmont finds a way to get the job done in a high-scoring expose. I do like the over. I wrote that up. I set my total 164, and with Belmont, we'll relate to 11.5 with them. 723, 724 on the betting board. It is Valparaiso playing us to Indiana State. Sycamores are a 1.5 point underdog. Total on this game, it is 164 to 165, and Seth Valparaiso is a 2-point favorite. Not really willing to go past the 1.5, but I'm going to be willing to lay the 1.5 with this Valparaiso bunch. The offense has been much better than it has been in past years because they're not turning the ball over. They are a top 75 team in terms of ball security, as you've got a pair of guys I like in the backcourt, as you've got Darius DiViero, give you about 3 assists, 4.5 points per game, though we've seen his minutes get slashed a little bit more as the season has went along, but Jesus de la Cruz Monegro has been able to give you 13 points, 2.5 assists, shoots in the mid-30s from 3-point range, and for Valparaiso, along with not turning the ball over, they also shoot 80% the free throw line. That's a top 20 mark in all of college basketball. Cooper Schwieger has done a nice job down low, give you about 6 boards per contest, and then you've been able to get a man that really doesn't give you a lot of scoring at Casper Sepp with about 4 points per contest, but he gives you 7 rebounds per game. They always have one of those guys. It used to be Jerome Palm, now it's going to be Sepp for this team, but I do think that Valparaiso gets the job done because with Indiana State, they're leaving quite a bit of something to be desired with regards to their overall just ball security. They're turning the ball over 15 times per contest outside the top 310 in terms of turnovers on a per possession basis. Indiana State has actually been halfway decent on the glass, about 153rd in the country with regards to rebound percentage. Valparaiso, they're more around about the 240th mark for Indiana State. You've also been able to get some good three-point shooting as well as Samaje Teal has been your main man. This guy has been able to give you about 17 points per contest. Indiana State as a collective, they're shooting in that neighborhood about 36.5% from three-point range. Teal's been able to shoot 37.5% from the outside. And then Kamani Dodi, giving this team 8.8 points per game, shooting over 40% from three-point range himself. You just need to get a little bit more out of Aaron Gray. He's been a little bit banged up. They've been able to get him back into form, so that's been nice for this Indiana State team. But I do think that Schwieger going to be the most dominant post presence in this game. It's an Indiana State team as a collective does a relatively solid job down low, but I think that the fact that Valparaiso protects the ball so much and Indiana State really doesn't is going to be the undoing of Indiana State in this one. Indiana State playing at a top 50 pace with regards to total possessions per game and just simply haven't been able to give you a lot defensively as well. In terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, Indiana State well outside the top 225, and they allow a lot of wide open looks from three-point range. While this Indiana State team has been able to shoot it really well from three-point range, they themselves allow you to shoot about 37.5% from three-point range in their road games, and Valparaiso also checking in right around about 185th with regards to their three-point shooting defense. So circumstance where I set my line at 2, I'm going to be willing to lay up to 1.5 with Valparaiso, and I do think that this total is starting to get just a little bit too high. Valparaiso, not necessarily a team that's completely running it and gunning it in. To their credit, in regulation only 73 points for fear allowed in each of their last 5 games. So set my total 162 in on the under and in on Valparaiso, laying up to a point and a half. 725, 726, another game that I wrote up. St. Bonaventure on the road against St. Louis. St. Louis opens up a 3-point favorite. Now they're a 2.5 point favorite total on this game between 139.5 to 140. Wish I could put it any other way. I think that the wrong team is favored here. I set St. Bonaventure as the 4.5 point favorite. I'm going to be taking them out right on the money line. St. Bonaventure now 13-1 against the spread, and at some point this fairy tale ride is going to come to an end for those of us that have made money off of St. Bonaventure. I just don't think that's going to be here. For St. Louis, they're starting to look a little bit better with regards to their offense, but still a team that's outside the top 90 in terms of points scored on a per possession basis. Robbie Avila is starting to cut down on the turnovers, which you do like to see, and Kalu Anya down low. He's been able to give you about 10 boards, 8.5 points per game, but this St. Bonaventure team has just been so good on the road. They're a top 40 team in terms of both points scored and points allowed on a per possession basis on the road. As a matter of fact, their defense is a top 25 unit in terms of points allowed per possession when they are on the road. Noah Brown has been rock solid down low with about 4.5 boards, 13 points per game. You've been dealing with a little bit of an injury in the backcourt to Sean Bowen, but Lajay Jones continues to shoot 50% from three-point range, and Melvin Council just being oh so versatile. This guy does it all. 5.5 boards, 4 assists, 2.5 steals, 14.5 points per game, and then you've got Chance Moore giving you more, 7.5 boards. He's only shooting about 30% from three-point range, but chips in there 15 points per game, and this is a St. Louis team that's leaving a lot to be desired guarding the three-point line. For the St. Louis team, they are well outside the top 150 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, and for St. Louis, they are going to leave you open from three-point range as they're allowing opponents to shoot from three-point range right around about 34%. That's 212th in all of college basketball. Meanwhile, this is a Bonnie's team that does a really good job of cutting you out from three-point range, allowing opponents on the road to shoot only 30.3% from three-point range. Now, they are going to have their hands full with Gibson Jimerson being able to supply the team with 18 points per contest. He's a 40.5% three-point shooter. Isaac Swope starting to find that form as well. 5.5 assists, 18 points per game. And he got off to a little bit of a rough start to the season, still only shooting about 34.5% from three-point range, but has really been able to round into form recently as he's given the team 15-plus points in each of the last 5 games, 4-plus assists in each of the last 5 games as well, with 2 turnovers or fewer in each of the last 4. So that's helpful for the St. Louis team with Robbie Avila obviously still giving you about 17 to 18 points per contest. He's been able to shoot it relatively well at 38.5% from three-point range, but the turnovers have been up this season, and I do think that St. Louis, again, they're going to have a tough time with the St. Bonaventure defense. St. Bonaventure has hit the road so well thus far this season, and they've been able to get past 70 points in 4 of their last 5 games. I think that the Bonnies get the job done once again. I like them outright on the money line. I think that they're going to be able to slow this game down as well. Semi-total at a 140.5. I do think that late game fouling going to be just enough to be able to push this total over, and St. Bonaventure has really executed with regards to their road offense, and St. Bonaventure also has to deal with the St. Louis team that's gotten past 70 points in each of their last 5 games. So in on the over and in on the Bonnies on the money line. Sub 27, sub 28 on the betting board. Another game that I wrote up. Illinois State on the road against Evansville. Evansville opens up as a 3.5 point underdog. Now they're a 5.5 to a 6 point dog. Totals between 134 to 134.5. I did set Illinois State as a favorite of 7.5 points. Now, when I wrote this up, it was on the opener of 3.5. Now that it has moved a little bit, you still have some value, in my opinion. Once you get past like a 7, that's a point of no return, but 5.5 to 6, still one to lay with an Illinois State team that is number 1 in all of college basketball with regards to 3-point shooting percentage on the road. These guys are shooting 43.5% from 3-point range in road games. Evansville is allowing opponents to shoot north of 34% from 3-point range at home. This is a textbook bad matchup here for Evansville. A Purple Aces team that's well outside the top 250 in terms of points scored on a per possession basis. You've had Deshaun Comer be able to supply the team with 13 points, 3.5 assists per contest, but he only shoots 25% from 3, and for as good as this Illinois State is from 3-point shooting, their team is. This is a Evansville team that is outside the top 335 in terms of their 3-point shooting percentage at 29%. Not so tremendous there. Gabe Pizzato has been the main scorer for the team. He's been able to supply 15.5 points per contest, but they've been without him for 5 games. It's looking like he's probably not going to be coming back for this one either. You do have Joshua Hughes down low, who's able to give you about 5.5 rebounds per game. Tanner Cuffin's been able to throw in their 6.5 boards per contest as well, and both of these guys do generate a steal per contest. Evansville relatively okay, being able to generate some turnovers, and Illinois State in their own right, they have been outside the top 230 in terms of opponents' 3-point shooting percentage, but this is an Illinois State team that's just doing such a better job of being able to execute offensively. This team has ascended to being a top 45 team in terms of points scored on a per possession basis, and if you just look in a road/neutral court environment, top 20 team with regards to points scored per possession. Johnny Kinzinger has been your main scorer, give you 14 points per contest, but I mean, it really is a whole is greater than the sum of its parts sort of unit with this team. You've been able to have down low someone like a Chase Walker do a nice job with 14 points, 6 rebounds per game, and among players that have made at least 1 3 for Illinois State this far this season, out of your top 7 scorers, all but one of them are shooting at least 37.5% from 3-point range. Lone exception is Dalton Banks, who throws in their 4.5 boards, 4 assists, 1.6 steals, along 10.5 points per game as the main point guard. Illinois State also in a cover spot. They shoot 78.5% at the free throw line. Do you think that Illinois State, a team that has been able to get to 74 plus points in 4 of their last 5 games, is really tightened up on the defensive side of things, going up against an Evansville unit that they have really not been able to get past 70 points all season long? It's been relatively rough for them. The last time Evansville was able to break the 70-point plateau, it was before Thanksgiving. I do think that Illinois State finds a way to be able to get the job done here, and what I think is going to be a little bit of a lower scoring game. Set my line at 7.5. I wrote up Illinois State laying the number, did set my total at a 135.5 as well. I do think that Illinois State does just enough to be able to get this total over, so in on the over and willing to lay with Illinois State. 729, 730 on the betting board. It is Georgia State playing goes to Georgia Southern. Georgia Southern is an underdog of 2.5 to 3 points. So on scheme is 153, and with Georgia State, I did set them as the 3-point favorite. So right now we're going to be waiting on a little bit of line movement. Right now I'm seeing 1 or 2 straight 2.5s out there. Would be willing to lay the 2.5 with Georgia State. With the Georgia Southern team, it's just been sadness with regards to their defense. They've really cranked up their tempo. They're a top 30 team with regards to total possessions per game, but you haven't been able to get either of these teams to really give you too much on offense. This is a Georgia Southern team that's 283rd in the country in terms of points scored on a per possession basis, 297th for Georgia State. But Georgia State, to their credit, they've been able to score a little bit more than 16 points more per 100 possessions when they've been at home rather than when they have been on the road. It's been a lot of moving pieces for Georgia State, and typically they like to have that one do-it-all sort of guy like DeJuan Odom was the last 2 years for this team, and they seem to have found him as Zariq Nutter. Not going to give you a lot in terms of 3-point shooting, but throws in there north of 2.5 assists, supplying the team with about 3.5 boards, 15 points per game, like what I'm seeing there. And then for Georgia Southern, the injury to Adante Holloman has been big for them as well. He's missed the last 8 games. He was their top scorer with 16 points per contest before going down with an injury and was shooting 45% from 3-point range. Now you're left with pretty much 2 guys that see minutes that are able to shoot above 33.5% from 3-point range. Is Naquan White along with Aaron Banks, and they've both been able to shoot relatively well from 3-point range. They combine for 5 assists per contest. White is able to give you about 13 points, 4 boards per contest. Banks more around about 8 points per game. And Bradley Douglas, he throws in there 14 points, pair of assists, shoots about 32% from 3-point range. But Georgia Southern outside the top 225 in turnovers on a per possession basis, as they're turning the ball over about 15 times per game, and neither of these teams are necessarily providing too much of a speed bump on defense. Georgia Southern about 226th in the country in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. Georgia State has been 303rd with that regard, but you do have more rebounding with the Georgia State team. Nicholas McMillan has been able to give you 10.5 rebounds per game. Meanwhile, on the flip side for Georgia Southern, you don't have a single guy in the roster that's really giving you north of 5 rebounds per game. I think that that's going to be a big giant issue for this team, as Georgia Southern right now with their overall rebound percentage 255th in the country. Eugene Brown, the transfer from Ohio State, just not giving you too much, with Georgia State being more around about 115th with regards to rebound percentage. Top 100 at home. I do think that they find a way to persevere, get the job done, willing to lay up to 2.5 with Georgia State. With regards to the total, did some mine at a 155 as well, with the way that Georgia Southern is just gunning it. So in on the over and in on Georgia State. 731, 732 on the betting board. Providence plays us Butler. Butler, a underdog of 2.5 to 3 points. Draw this game between 138 to 138.5. Did set my total at a 136.5. I'm going to be in on the under. This is a Providence team that just has not been reliable in terms of their offense, and they've been one of the slowest teams in all of college basketball. In terms of total possessions per game, this Providence team is well outside the top 275 with that regard. And it's a Providence team that has been relatively respectable in terms of their defense. They go up against a Butler team that I've had my gripes with them on the glass, but they've improved a little bit with that regard. 132nd in the country in terms of their rebound percentage, and when it comes to Butler, they've been able to find quite a bit of something out of Andre 3000 Screen, who's been able to give you north of 5 rebounds per game as the true 7-footer for Providence. It's just been a bunch of moving pieces for them, because you just don't know what you're going to be able to get when you're going to be able to get him back out of Bryce Hopkins. He's only played in 3 games thus far this season. They had him back for a little bit of time. He's been missing ever since then. You don't know when / if he's going to be coming back this season. And then Wesley Carted has been rock solid with about 10 points, 4 boards, shoots 41% from 3-point range, but team as a whole shoots 33.5% from the outside. Despite playing at a relatively slow tempo, they are turning the ball over 13 times per contest. It's not even like this Providence team has been amazing on the glass. For Providence, they have a really nice rebound percentage, but you don't necessarily have that feature guy down low. Perhaps they're going to be finding it, as you've had Oswin Osuwunme, hopefully I said that correctly, the 6'10" big man, come in from Nigeria, 5 points, 5 rebounds, a little bit over a block per contest, and really played a nice game against UConn a few days ago. He had 3 blocks, 9 rebounds, and he's been able to give you at least 8 rebounds in 3 of the last 5 games, so he's starting to step up a little bit more for the team. But when you've got someone like a Jaden Pierre as your top scorer with 2.5 assists, shooting 38% for 3, but 13.5 points per contest, that's a bit of an issue. And Butler does have those top flight scorers, as they've got their top 2 scorers back from a season ago, and Jamal Telford, along with Pierre Brooks. They've been able to combine for about 31.5 points per contest. Both are shooting north of 39% for 3. And Patrick McCaffrey can be a little bit hit or miss, but he gives you 13 points, shoots 41.5% from 3-point range. I feel like you could still use a little bit more out of Philip Biggs-Jack, who's been able to give you about 2 assists per contest, shooting in the mid-30s from 3-point range, but we're starting to find a little bit more in terms of their ancillary guards, as you've been able to get 40% 3-point shooting out of Kobe King as well. So I like the way that Butler starting to round into form a little bit more. And Butler is one of your slower paced teams in all of college basketball as well. In terms of total possessions per game, this team is outside the top 275 with that regard as well. I just don't know if you're going to get enough possessions to be able to get an over in this game, despite the fact that Butler, they have been a team that has been giving it up a little bit on the inside, but Butler is allowing opponents to shoot 24% from 3-point range on the road. I do think that in the end, Providence, with the dunk just being as good of a home court environment as it is, they get the job done outright. But semi-line at 2.5, here at 3, going to be willing to take those points with Butler. Also in on the total under as well. Semi-total 136.5, 733, 734 on the betting board. Rice, we give our road to Lane Kiffin. Go Owls. They're on the road. They're facing off against North Texas. North Texas is a favorite of 11.5 to 12 points. Draw this game, you're going to be finding it at about a 125.5 to a 126.5. They start open up at a 124, and I'm in on the under. I set my total at a 121. Shock, shock, surprise, surprise. North Texas, one of the slowest teams in all of college basketball once again. 363rd out of 364 D1 teams. The only team that's playing faster than them is Virginia, but I mean, we have noticed it with the coaching regime change that we've been seeing over at Rice. They've been very much prioritizing defense. They're a team that ranks about 265th in the country in terms of total possessions per game, so that's been very interesting to see, and I do think that that defense is going to be able to keep them lively. I'm going to be willing to take the points with Rice, as with Rice, they've been able to do a nice job on the glass. They're 42nd in the country with regards to their overall rebound percentage. Now, where Rice goes wrong is that this team does turn the ball over north of 13 times per contest. North Texas, a top 5 team in the country in terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis. So that's going to be relatively rough for them. But Rob Lanier, I do believe, is a really good coach with Rice and has gotten the most out of this roster. Trey Borneau has been your main man in the backcourt. He's been able to give this team 13.5 points. He throws in there 6 boards, 4 assists from 3-point range. It's been hit or miss, but he's shooting about 30% from 3-point range. Rice as a whole about 31.5% from the outside, as Alan Kusanovic has been able to shoot 40% from 3 with his 9 points per contest. He's been your main guy, but Gator Boom Boom Powell, he's able to give you about 7.5 rebounds per game. Trey Patterson, who began his career at Villanova, he's been able to give you 4.5 rebounds per game. Now, he's been in and out of the lineup all season long, and he's been out since early December. I don't expect him to be able to play in this game, but even without him, this Rice team has actually been able to do a very fine job with regards to both hitting the glass and in terms of just their overall defense. They have given up fewer than 70 points in each of their last 4 games, albeit they lost against a non-D1 team. I believe that they played against like North Texas or something like that. Not the North Texas that they're playing right now, but like North Dallas, Texas, some sort of a subsidiary. But that said, this has been a North Texas team that has really been able to hold up with regards to their defense as well. Played a little bit of a harebrained game against UAB a few weeks ago, but other than the game against UAB, they've really been able to hold up at the point of attack. That's really the lone game that they've given up north of 70 points in this season, as Aiden Wright has been Mr. Wright for the team. He's supplying 12.5 points, a little bit over seal per contest, shoots 36.5% from 3. And North Texas, always a relatively solid 3-point shooting team. They're shooting about 35% from 3-point range as a collective. They're a top 80 team in the country with regards to rebound percentage, but their rebound percentage goes up to the top 75 when they are at home, as Jonathan Massey has been able to step up with his versatility, 9 points, 4.5 boards. He gives you a little bit of something from the outside, but only shoots about 27% from 3-point range. Latrell Jostle, Jasper Floyd have been able to give you about 8.5 points per game as well. And Floyd, not necessarily the world's greatest scorer, but once again, versatile guy that's able to give you about 4 assists per contest. This is a North Texas team that has been quite a bit better with regards to their offense when they've been at home rather than on the road, as North Texas shooting about 35.5% from 3-point range in their home games, below 33.5% when they're on the road. But I do think that this is going to be a low-scoring slobber knocker. North Texas is going to do a nice job of generating turnovers. Rice is going to do a nice job on the glass. I do think that Rice remains lively in this one. We'll take the double figures with Rice, made them a 9-point dog, and in on the under, sub total 121, 735, 736 on the betting board. Omaha is playing us to UMKC. UMKC is a 1 to 1.5 point road favorite. Total on this game is 139.5. Say UMKC is a 1.5 point favorite. I'm going to be willing to lay one with them with this UMKC unit. I do think that their defense is going to improve. Right now, they're outside the top 220 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, but Marvin Menzies is a guy that really preaches his team to play a little bit more slowly in a Summit League where teams are looking to run and gun it in. Omaha's been looking to slow themselves down as well. They're outside the top 200 in terms of total possessions per game, but just because you play slowly doesn't mean that you play great defense. And for the Nebraska-Omaha team, they just haven't played good defense. I wish you could put it any other way, but they're 295th in the country in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. And when you isolate it to just their home games, they are outside the top 315 with this regard. So, I mean, that has been very much less than savory. And for UMKC, they're probably going to have the most versatile 2 players out there on the floor in Jamar Brown and Alontae Anderson Cobb. Cobb has been able to give you 13 points, shoots in the high 30s from 3-point range at 6'6", and Jamar Brown is throwing in there 16.5 points, 7.5 rebounds per game. It is a UMKC team that has a little bit of a difficult time of being able to hold on to the ball. They've been turning the ball over 12.5 times per contest, but they also shoot as a collective 36% from 3-point range. You've had Cameron Foss be able to give you 10 points, shoots in the 36th percentile in terms of 3-point shooting percentage. Kasheem Grady has been able to shoot 40% from 3-point range. He throws in there 7.5 points per contest. And then for Omaha, they've been sort of using a pair of guys, J.J. White along with Lance Waddles, to both be able to give you about 2.5 assists per contest. They sort of have a facilitation by committee sort of thing going on, and has caused their offense to be very janky as they're turning the ball over about 12 times per contest. Markel Sutton, he's been your main guy. And down low, he's giving you 7.5 rebounds, 16.5 points per game, so he's been able to do a nice job. And then you got a few other guys that give you like 4.5 rebounds per game. Lance Waddles being one of them with about 4 boards per contest. You've also been able to get in that neighborhood about 7.5 points, 4.5 rebounds per game out of Cameron Thomas at 6'8". Has a little bit of versatility, but shoots below 33% from 3-point range. But with Nebraska-Omaha, not really much by way of rebounding in this game as well. It has been a Nebraska-Omaha team that has been incredibly inconsistent, and it just feels like they played their worst basketball at home. I wish I could put it any other way, but that truly has been the case. Meanwhile, for the UMKC team, they always do a pretty rock-solid job, typically, of being able to hit the glass. For UMKC, a little bit of a setback this season, but their overall rebound percentage are about 124th in all of college basketball. You got a Nebraska-Omaha team that in this sector, they're about 180th. I do think that UMKC wins from within. I do think that they find a way way to get the job done against an Omaha team that's had a really difficult time guarding the three-point line and just doesn't have as much versatility. So UMKC is 1.5-point favorite. I do like them outright on the money line. Do think that you see a slow-down slog of a game as well. So make my total 133.5. I'm in on the under as well. 737, 738 on the betting board. St. Thomas plays us to South Dakota State. South Dakota State is a 3 to 3.5 point underdog. Total on this game is 156.5. I'm going to be one to take a shot on the under. It's at my total 152.5. South Dakota State actually playing quite a bit more slowly than they have in past years. St. Thomas starting to gun it. They're in the top 100 in terms of total possessions per game, and this has been a St. Thomas team that has been a top 75 unit in terms of points scored on a per possession basis. But South Dakota State playing much better with regards to their defense. In games played away from home, they are well outside the top 175 in terms of total possessions per game, and their job is to really cut the seam off from three-point range. And for South Dakota State, they're an okay three-point shooting team. They're shooting about 34.5% from distance, but this is a team that year in and year out, you expect them to be like a top 40, top 50 team with regards to their three-point shooting percentage, but the big elixir to that has been what they've been able to get down low. As Oscar Clough, who was over at Washington State last year, he's supplying 18 points. He is in the top 6 nationally in terms of rebounds per game. He is supplying 11.7 rebounds per game, and you don't have a single guy on the St. Thomas team that gives you north of 4.5 rebounds per game. Now, for St. Thomas, they've done a good job with guys like Kendall Blue, Miles Barnesable, being able to rebound by committee, but there's really nobody that is a standout for the team. And for the St. Thomas team, they have been getting a little bit more sloppy with the ball. Last year, they were in the top 25 in terms of fewest turnovers on a per possession basis. Now they are turning the ball over closer to about 11.5 times per contest, and this is a St. Thomas team that is outside the top 200 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. And again, with the South Dakota State team, they've been able to place themselves in the top 175 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. It's been going a little bit northward as some of the plays began because you have a lot of teams that are all gas, no breaks with regards to this conference, but you've had Jaden Saylor be able to be a really nice cog in the backcourt, giving you about 12.5 points, shoots 39% from three-point range. It's a South Dakota State team that has turned the ball over about 12.5 times per contest, so you'd like to see that be a little bit better, but Matthew Moores, with about 6'8" size, is shooting about 36% from three-point range. It's a team that's remarkable at the free throw line as well. Each of your top 4 scorers for the South Dakota State team, they shoot at least 79% of the free throw line year in and year out. The St. Thomas team has been one of the better teams at the charity stripe, as well as Barnesable has been your main guy. He's been able to give the team 14 points per contest, and for St. Thomas, it is truly one of those teams where it's a sort of a whole is greater than some of its parts approach with regards to what you're going to be able to get out of them, because they do a nice job being able to facilitate by committee. You've had your main guy, Drake Dobbs, be able to give you about 3.5 assists per contest, but you've also got Nolan minus Salle along with Kendall Blue combining for about 4.5 assists per contest. Both of these guys have been able to give you double figures as well. And right now with Blue, he's shooting 42.5% from three-point range. And Dobbs continues to shoot 53.5% from three-point range. I do think that we're going to see a little bit of regression with that regard. And it is that St. Thomas team that they are well outside the top 225 in terms of opponents' three-point shooting percentage as well. I do think that with South Dakota State, what they're able to do on the glass with the St. Thomas team as well, being a team that if they miss their first shot, they're not going to get an offensive rebound. They're in the bottom 50 in the country in terms of percentage of their missed shots that result in an offensive rebound. That it's going to allow the St. Thomas team to be able to perhaps get the job done, but not be able to cover this game. I set my line at a 2.5, so here at 3.5. We'll take the points with a South Dakota State team that has just found themselves on top of this conference year in and year out. I think that they're going to do a good job of being able to remain lively in this one, so we'll take the under, set my total 152.5, and the points with South Dakota State. 739, 740 on the betting board. It is Gonzaga, and they play us to San Diego. San Diego is a 30.5 to a 31-point underdog, and your total on this game between 155 and 156, and I made my number of 35. So I'm going to be willing to lay with Gonzaga. I fully recognize that Gonzaga's had a little bit of a tough time covering these larger lines this season, but this is a San Diego team as well outside the top 250 in terms of points scored on a per possession basis, well outside the top 225 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, and San Diego just has not been able to find any outside shooting to save their lives. They turn the ball over 14.5 times per game. They shoot 26.5% from three-point range. You've got one guy that's been solid from three-point range. Tony Duckett is now shooting about 39% from three-point range. He supplied this team with 6.5 points per contest, 9+ points in 3 of the last 5 games. He is really the lone guy that is giving you north of 3 points per contest and has actually played in all the games this year that is shooting above 30.5% from three-point range. They do an okay job down low. Steven Jamerson, along with Stefan Trutt, have been able to combine for in that neighborhood about 15 rebounds per game. They both give you about 9 to 9.5 points per game and give KJ Bradley has been your main facilitator. 2 steals, 4 assists, 15.5 points per game, but you just need a little bit more than that. It's not as if this team is playing super duper up-tempo either, so the turnovers become even more ghastly with that regard. And for the San Diego team, on the road, they're right now shooting 18.9%. Evansville and Minnesota are the only 2 teams with worse 3-point shooting percentages on the road, and this has been a Gonzaga team that has really ratcheted up with regards to their defense. Top 50 team in the country in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. You've got Ben Gregg along with Michael Ajayi, who are doing a nice job down low with a combined 11 rebounds per game. Ajayi shot north of 40% for 3-point range last year at Pepperdine. He's shooting 18% from the outside. That should be going northward, and then got Ryan McIntyre giving you an assist-to-turnover ratio of 4, 9.6 assists to 2.4 turnovers per game. He's generating about 11.5 points per contest himself. K-Leaf Battle shoots 36.5% from 3 for a Gonzaga team that honestly hasn't been amazing from 3-point range. They're shooting 34.5% from 3. I think that that's going to be going northward as the season goes along. And then Graham Ike has been a little bit hit or miss, but it does feel like he's starting to find his bearings. 17 points per game with about 7 boards per contest as well, but he's been able to give you double figures in 4 of the last 5 games, so I like what I'm seeing there. And this has been a Gonzaga team that has been just so much better at home rather than on the road as well, because they played a really brutal non-conference schedule with regards to road and neutral court games, going up against a San Diego team that allows opponents to shoot about 35.3% from 3-point range away from home. I do think that this should be some thorough domination from Gonzaga's allowing opponents at home to shoot 23.4% from 3-point range, so don't know if San Diego is going to be able to do their part with regards to the total. I set my total at a 153, so you're at the 156 in on the under, and I'm willing to lay up to 34.5 here with Gonzaga. 741, 742, another game that I wrote up. You've got Penn State on the road against Illinois, and Illinois is a 9.5 point favorite. Total on this game, it is 164, and I've been seeing a few 10s out there as well, but whether you've got a 9.5 or 10, I'm going to take the points with Penn State. Anything north of 8 is a take for me, and I did write this one up as for Illinois, they have been a top 20 team in the country in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, but I feel like a little bit of that was a byproduct of playing some, shall we say, lesser teams in the non-conference. When they've been in conference, it's been really relinquishing a little bit more as they've given up now 77 plus points in 3 of their last 4 games. The one exception is when they played against Chicago State, but this team is absolutely exploding on offense. They've been able to get past the 80-point plateau in each of their last 4 games, and really, if you take out that Tennessee game, they've been able to get past the 80-point plateau in 5 out of their last 6 games. So I've been very impressed by what I've been seeing there. Kasparis Jakanuskis has been able to give you 4 plus assists, 5 plus boards, 16 points per game, one of the most well-rounded players in all of college basketball. And he headlines a team that has Tomislav Ivic being able to give you about 9 rebounds per game. He has shot it well from 3-point range for being 7 feet tall, and this Illinois team is one of the best rebounding teams in all of college basketball. Number 2 in the country with regards to rebound percentage. Penn State is much better on the glass than they were a season ago. They're actually a top 70 team with regards to rebound percentage. Do I think that they're going to win that battle down low against Illinois? No, but at the same time, Yannick Konaniter, the true 7-footer, has been able to give you about 7 boards per contest. He throws in there 12.5 points per game, and Penn State is the top 15 team in the country with regards to turnovers forced on a per possession basis. You've got a pair of guys in Zachary Hicks along Nick Kern who have been able to shoot north of 40% from 3. They've been able to combine for 24.5 points per contest. Both of these guys give you about 2.5 assists per game, but Ace Baldwin is the ace when it comes to the backcourt. Top 5 player with regards to assists per game in all of college basketball. 15 points, 8.4 assists. He's only shooting about 29% from 3-point range himself. I do think that that's going to be going a little bit northward. Penn State has been a little bit hit or miss with regards to their 3-point shooting percentage, and they do go up against an Illinois team that overall has been pretty rock solid with regards to their defense. But again, I do feel like their home 3-point shooting percentage numbers, what have you, have been a little bit warped by the competition that they've been playing against, as Illinois allowing opponents at home to shoot 26.8% from 3-point range. I think that they're good with their perimeter defense. I don't think that they're quite that good with their perimeter defense. Penn State, meanwhile, they're allowing opponents to shoot only about 31% from 3-point range on the road. So I do think the Penn State going to be able to put the clamps on a little bit more. It has been an Illinois team that has been pretty solid at being able to take care of the ball. You've been able to have Will Riley be able to give the team double figures as well. He's able to give you a little bit in terms of helping out this offense along Kylan Boswell, who's really come on strong recently. About 4 assists, 11.5 points per game for a team that turns the ball over 11.5 times per contest. For their tempo, that's pretty darn good, but getting back to Boswell, he's been able to give you 14 plus points in each of the last 4 games. Do think that Illinois, at home, they should be able to get the job done. Don't think that it's going to be quite by double figures. I set my line at 8, so I was willing to write up Penn State in this spot. I do think the Penn State steps it up with regards to their defense, and Illinois, after a few less than savory performances, they ratchet up a little bit as well. So, somebody told 162 in on the under and the points with with Penn State. 7:43, 7:44 on the betting board. Texas A&M, it's where to face off against Oklahoma. Oklahoma opened up as a 2-point underdog. They're now a 1.5 point favorite, and your total on this game is a 148 to a 148.5. And with Texas A&M, I set them as a 1.5 point favorite. I actually thought that the opener was right. I like Texas A&M all right on the money line, and the big reason why I like this Texas A&M team is that I think that they win the battle down low. As for this Oklahoma team, you do have Jalen Moore, who's able to give you more, as he's able to give you 6+ rebounds per game. He's thrown in there right around about 14 to 15 points per game, and Jeremiah Fears has been really good in the backcourt with being able to give you 18 points, 4.5 assists, but the 3.6 turnovers per game are a little bit off-putting to me. It's a Texas A&M team that has been one of the better defensive teams in all of college basketball. In terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, they are number 9 in all of college basketball. Meanwhile, this is an Oklahoma team that, while they have the lone loss on their ledger, they're about 97th in the country in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. They're outside the top 40 in terms of points scored on a per possession basis. Oklahoma's been really good at being able to guard the perimeter, as for this Oklahoma team, opponents are having a tough time being able to make their threes. They're number 5 in all of college basketball, but the Texas A&M team is not really predicated around three-point shooting. They shoot only about 31% as a collective from three. Wade Taylor, the fourth, is able to give you 15 points. He doles out 5 assists per contest. And Zariq Phelps really doesn't shoot much from three. He's looking to slash to the rim. 2.5 steals, 13.5 points per game out of him, and then just have so many guys that are able to give you north of 4.5 rebounds per game. As a matter of fact, for Texas A&M, 5 different guys give you at least 4.5 rebounds per game. Anderson Garcia, Henry Coleman, Solomon Washington. These 3 guys have been able to combine for in that neighborhood about like 18 to 19 rebounds per game. With Garcia, he's actually giving you a mid-30s 3-point shooting percentage, and he and Washington have been able to combine for 2 blocks per contest. For Payne is able to give you a little bit over a block per contest as well. Even though Texas A&M leaves a little bit of something to be desired offensively, this defense has just been absolutely sucking the life out of teams. As for Texas A&M, they have allowed nobody to score north of 71 points outside their tournament in lovely Las Vegas. And lovely Las Vegas, apparently, that's where their defense did not go to, and what happens in Vegas stays in Vegas. And the Texas A&M defense has been much better away from Vegas. Meanwhile, for this Oklahoma team, to their credit, they've gotten to at least 79 points each of their last 5 games, but not necessarily a super-duper up-tempo team. I think that they're going to be held down in this one. I think that Texas A&M gets their style and gets the job done. I set my total 141, so I'm in on the under, and I do like Texas A&M right on the money line. 745, 746 on the betting board. Kansas plays us to Arizona State. Arizona State, a 13.5 to a 14-point dog. Draw this game between 143.5 to a 144, and for Kansas, they've only played 1 game over the total this year. I think that this becomes 2. I did set my total 146.5. I'm in on the over. This is a much improved Arizona State team on offense. They're back in the top 100 in terms of points scored on a per possession basis after they were approaching right around 300th last season. And for Arizona State, overall, they're 44th in the country in terms of 3-point shooting percentage defense. It really takes a dive when they're away from home, though. They're not allowing opponents at home to shoot only about 23% from 3-point range. In a road/neutral court environment, this ups to about 35% from 3-point range. And Kansas, to their credit, they have been a top 40 team in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. It's not easy to be able to shoot threes at Fog Allen Fieldhouse, as they're allowing opponents to shoot only about 29.5% from 3-point range. And I really like what I'm seeing out of Zeke Mayo for this Kansas team, as well as he's been able to slide the team with 13+ points, shoots in the high 30s from 3-point range, throws in there some nice rebounds as well. And then for Arizona State, it's been a case where you've gotten Bashir Jihad going. He's a 6'9", little bit of a combo player, 13.5 points, 5.5 boards, shoots 39% for 3. And overall, Arizona State, they shoot 37.5% for 3. They do turn the ball over 13 times per game. Kansas is solid but not amazing with regards to being able to generate turnovers. Jaden Keatons has come in as a freshman, and he's been very good down low for Arizona State. 3.2 blocks and 8.2 rebounds per game. The blocks per game, a top 10 mark in all of college basketball. And then you've been able to have BJ Tornado Freeman along with Jusan Sanan in the backcourt be able to team up. They've been able to combine for about 25.5 points per game. With Freeman, he gives you 3 assists per game, while also Mason has actually been your main facilitator with about 3.5 assists per game. But for Arizona State, it is a team that it feels like they do feed a little bit more off their home crowd and the curtain of distraction, what have you. Heading to the Fog, I think it's going to be a little bit tough. I set my line at a 14.5. Hunter Dickinson should be able to win the battle down low for this Kansas team. 16 points, 10.5 or so rebounds per game. It's a Arizona State team that has been able to do a better job on the glass than they've been able to do in past years, but still leaving a little bit of something to be desired down low. As for this Kansas team, you just haven't necessarily been able to get a ton out of AJ Storr, who's been able to give you 8 points per contest, but it's a little bit of a one-trick pony. But even with that, top 30 team with regards to rebound rate, as Juan Harris has been able to give you an assist-to-turnover ratio that is north of 3, and for Arizona State, about 147th in the country with regards to rebound percentage. So I did set Kansas as a 14.5 point favorite. Willing to lay up to 14 with them, and this is a number number that's starting to hike up, and did semi total 146.5, so in on the over and one to lay with Kansas. 747, 748 on the betting board. Another game that I wrote up, Virginia Tech on the road against Stanford, and Stanford does find themselves as 8 to 8.5 point favorites. Totals between 144 to 144.5. Semi total 135.5. I'm in on the under. Got a Virginia Tech team that's a relatively mid-tempo team that is outside the top 275 in terms of points scored on a per possession basis away from home, and they are one of the worst teams at taking care of the ball. Outside the top 320 in terms of turnovers on a per possession basis, outside the top 335 on the road, as you've been able to get a little bit more recently out of Brandon Rechsteiner. He's the main point guard for the team, with having the Heiser Miller situation happen. He was supposed to be the team's main point guard. Right now, he's in the middle of a gambling controversy. That's not great, as Rechsteiner about 3.5 assists per contest, but he's only shooting 28% from three-point range. Toby Luell along with Michael Poteet, two forwards have been your main scorers, combined 23 points, 10 rebounds per game, and Luell does shoot 41% from three-point range as a collective. Virginia Tech actually shoots 35% from three, and that has been a Stanford team that has been outside the top 75 in terms of points scored on a per possession basis. Meanwhile, Stanford is pretty much the polar opposite of Virginia Tech. They keep things clean. They turn the ball over about 10.5 times per contest. They're okay with their three-point shooting. They shoot about 33% from three, but you've had Jalen Blakes come in, give you about 5 assists, 14.5 points per game. He was over at Duke to begin his career. He's been rock solid there. Maximine Reynaud at 7'1". He's just unguardable for this Virginia Tech team, in my opinion. A steal and a block per contest, 21 points, 11.5 boards at 7'1", shoots 36.4% from three-point range. It is a Stanford team that at times they could leave a little bit of something to be desired down low, but still, this is a Stanford team that with regards to their overall rebound percentage, they're clocking at about 107th in all of college basketball. For this Virginia Tech team, they're actually ascending into the top 85 with that regard, so a little bit of credit where it is due. Stanford probably not going to be able to get a lot of second and third chances. Chisholm Okpara, the transfer from Harvard, he's starting to give you a little bit more on a scoring front. He's been able to give you 9+ points in 3 of the last 5 games, but only about 2.5 rebounds per game at 6'8", so I do think that with Stanford, they're going to be relying upon their backcourt to get the job done. And Stanford, a top 125 team in terms of steals per game and steals on a per possession basis. I do think that Isaiah Sellers give you 37.5% three-point shooting, 14 points per game. Going to be just enough for Stanford to cover this game. A game where I think that Virginia Tech, once again, going to be quite sloppy with the ball. It has been a Virginia Tech team that has really been struggling in terms of being able to find good, clean offense, being held to 65 points or fewer 2 of their last 3 games, with the lone exception coming against a dead Miami team. So, did something total 135.5. I wrote up the under, and with this Stanford team, willing to lay up to 11 points with them. 749, 750 on the betting board. Air Force is on the road against San Diego State. San Diego State, a 21 to a 21.5 point favorite. Total on this game is 131.5. Says San Diego State is a 22.5 point favorite. I'm going to be one to lay the 21.5. Bo Becker seems to be finally returning for this Air Force team. That's big because he was a 13+ point per game scorer for them a season ago, and he was dealing with an injury for about 10+ games for this team. So just being able to get him back out there on the floor is nice, but he hasn't been able to contribute anything in the 2 games since he's returned. A combined 15 minutes and 6 points. So even though he's back, it's not like you're getting too much out of him. And you just need to get more rebounding out of Wesley Chalkowski. He's a true 7-footer that's giving you 2 boards per contest. Just shoot 31% from 3-point range. So versatility is there, but that's a little bit of an issue. Evan Taylor, he's been able to supply the team with 14 points, 6.5 boards, 4.5 assists per contest. But for this Air Force team, they're going to need to hope to be able to get hot from 3-point range because they shoot 60.5% the free throw line, and they just don't really give you too much along the interior. And for the San Diego State team, they're a top 15 team in the country in terms of their block shot rate with Magoon McGloth. He is a true 7-footer who's a freshman who's been able to give you 3 blocks and 4 rebounds per game. He's been a dominator down low. And then for San Diego State, they shoot about 37% from 3-point range, and it is a backcourt in which you don't necessarily have that one main guy, but you've got a lot of guys that have been able to come through and have been able to give you some nice, consistent 3-point shooting, as you've got Nick Boyd along with Miles Bird, who have been able to combine for about 25.5 points per contest. Both of these guys shoot above 38.5% from 3, and as a matter of fact, each of your top 4 scorers are shooting at least 37.5% from the outside. Even Magoon McGloth is right now shooting 40% from 3-point range, so very well rounded with that regard. And San Diego State, as per usual, doing a nice job of being able to guard the arc themselves. They rank in the top 25 nationally in terms of opponents' 3-point shooting percentage. They've done a solid job of generating turnovers. They're never necessarily going to be amazing with that regard, and they have been about 275th in the country with regards to their 2-point shooting percentage. But again, this is an Air Force team that they leave quite a bit of something to be desired, both on the offensive end and the defensive end, despite the fact that they shoot it okay from 3-point range. They're about 350th in the country in terms of opponents' 3-point shooting percentage. They're allowing opponents to shoot north of 37.5% from the outside, and with Air Force not able to get offensive rebounds to save their lives, I do think that San Diego State going to go out there, dominate this game, turn it into a little bit of a low-tempo slog as both of these teams, both outside the top 200 with regards to total possessions per game. So set my total at a 130.5 in on the under, and I'm willing to lay up to 22 with San Diego State. This is the last game on the normal Las Vegas betting board before we hit the extra game, 751, 752. You've got Virginia on the road against Cal. California is a 4 to 4.5 point favorite. Total on this game is 132, and I did set my total 128.5. I'm in on the under with Virginia, dead last in the country in terms of total possessions per game, and this has been a Cal team that has been very inefficient with regards to their defense. They're outside the top 200 with regards to points allowed on a per possession basis, and for Cal, they're playing fast. They're not playing warp speed fast, 174th in the country in terms of total possessions per game. Now, for Virginia, this has been a team that's been able to shoot about 37.5 to 38% from three-point range, but this has also been a Virginia unit that has been so different when they've been on the road rather than at home. Their points per possession has been really dipping when they've been on the road. Really, the last 2 years, it's been going down by north of 15 points per 100 possessions. Now, this year for Virginia, they're actually shooting 40% from three-point range on the road, with Isaac McNeely being able to give you about 13 plus points per contest. And I do like what Jacob Kofi has been able to bring to the table. He's a big man that's able to give you 9 plus points, right around about 5 rebounds per game. So he's been able to do a great job with that regard. But again, the effectiveness of this team has really been dipping on the road. Even though the 3-point shooting percentage goes up big time when they're on the road, they do see that overall scoring go down by about 14.5 points per 100 possessions. And then Javon Blackshear on the flip side has been really good for the Cal team. He missed 3 games due to injury a little bit earlier in the season, and ever since he's come back, he's picked up right where he's left off, as he's supplying the team with 12 points, shooting 40% for three-point range. And Andrei Stojakovic, a former top 50 recruit, has really come into his own. 20 points, 4.5 rebounds per game. He's on a tear with regards to his scoring now, and has been a Cal team that, once again, they're leaving quite a bit of something to be desired on the defensive side of things. But Jeremiah Wilkerson, true freshman, has stepped in. He's been able to give the team 12.5 points per game, and when he's been out there, you've been able to have DJ Campbell, who's been a little bit banged up, give about 7.5 points per game. It's a Cal team that I think should be able to win the battle down low. Virginia outside the top 175 with regards to rebound rate when they are on the road. This is a Cal team that has been doing a top 125 job with regards to rebound percentage as well, being able to have guys like Matty Sissoko, Lee Dort be able to combine for about 12.5 rebounds per game, despite the fact that they combine for about 9.5 points per game. I do think that they have enough to be able to get the job done in this game, a game that I think is going to be very much slowed down. So my total at a 128.5 and on the under, I'm willing to lay up to 4 with Cal. Set them as a 4.5 point favorite. Now we hit the extra games.
The normal betting board picks are complete, but there are some extra games today, so we go into the bonus.
306-501, 306-502. You've got Holy Cross, and they're going to be playing against the Navy. Navy's an underdog of 2 points. Total on this game is 144. Did set my total 143.5. I'm going to be in on the under. Neither of these teams are really playing at too high of a tempo. Holy Cross has been starting to kick it up a little bit more, but still, they're right around about 355th in the country in terms of total possessions per game. That's actually less than what it was a season ago. Meanwhile, this is a Navy team that's about 225th in the country in terms of total possessions per game, which for them is deemed as fast. Now, Holy Cross, well outside the top 225 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, and they've done a really nice job shooting from three-point range. They're a top 20 team with their three-point shooting percentage right around about 39.9%. They've got a lot of versatility. Max Green along Joe Nugent, both staying between 6'5", 6'6". You've got Nugent shooting 44.5% from the outside, 12.5 points, 5 rebounds per game, and then Green is a do-it-all sort of dynamo, 14.5 points, 5 boards, 3.3 assists per contest. Now for Holy Cross, they turn the ball over 11.5 times per contest, which actually for that tempo is not necessarily the world's greatest. That said, this has also been a Holy Cross team that they've been able to do an okay job of being able to guard the arc. They're allowing opponents to shoot less than 32.5% from three-point range. For Navy, this team is a team that is very willing to gamble a little bit for turnovers, and they leave themselves open from three-point range outside the top 220 with regards to opponents' three-point shooting percentage. They've done a solid job on the glass with having down low Aiden Koe be able to give you 10.5 points, 8.3 rebounds per game, and Donovan Draper, really nice at being able to do a bit of everything. A steal, 8 points, 7.5 rebounds per game, is able to pop it from 3, though. So he's shooting about 24% from 3, but Jinwoo Kim has come from out of nowhere and has shot 49% from 3 with 7.5 points per contest for this Navy team. And then Awesome Benjini is your main man, 4 assists, 17 points, shoots 42% from 3-point range for a Navy team that, in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, it's really slipped for them. They're well outside the top 225 with that regard, but they do a relatively solid job from the outside. I do think that they're going to be able to control the glass, but in the end, I do think that Holy Cross's 3-point shooting going to be too much, and for Navy, they're in 21st in the country with regards to their 2-point shooting percentage, and you need to be able to hurt this Holy Cross team down low. So I did set my line at a 3.5. I'm going to be willing to lay with Holy Cross, and I set my total 143.5 here to 144 plus. I'm in on the under. 306-503, 306-504. Army is going to be playing out to Loyola Maryland, and Loyola Maryland does find themselves as an underdog of 2 points. Balance game between 144 to 143 and a half, and just on my total of 147 and a half. I'm in on the over. It's a Loyola Maryland team that has been quite inefficient with regards to their defense. I do think that this Army team, a team that has really been upping their tempo, they're back in the top 100 in terms of total possessions per game. They do find a way against a Loyola Maryland team that has had their issues with regards to the interior. Now, with regards to perimeter defense, Loyola Maryland is a top 80 team in terms of opponents' three-point shooting percentage. You're allowing opponents to shoot less than 30.5% from the outside, and Milo Selic has been able to give you about 14.5 points, 9 rebounds per game at 6'10", but AJ Allenpatch should be able to match up pretty well with that regard, 9 rebounds per game, and then Jalen Rucker has been a really nice backcourt piece. 18 points, 3.5 assists, was their leading scorer 2 years ago. Missed all of last season. He has come back and has shot 38% from three-point for an Army team that's now shooting 34% from three-point. Josh Scovins chips in there a little bit over seal, 1.3 blocks, 16.5 points per contest. So, like what I'm seeing there, Army has a little bit more depth than they've had in past seasons, and for this Loyola Maryland team, they've always had a little bit of a tough time holding onto the ball. 13.5 turnovers per game, despite the fact that this is not a team that's really going to be playing super duper up tempo or anything like that. In terms of total possessions per game, this Loyola Maryland team is right now checking in 217th in all of college basketball. Braden Speed has been able to give you just under 3 assists per contest, but he's been very inconsistent in the backcourt. Does shoot about 35.5% from three, and that's it for a Loyola Maryland team that they shoot 29.7% from three-point range as a collective. That's really the big way to get to this Army team. Army is about 310th in the country in terms of opponents' three-point shooting percentage, more around about 225th with regards to rebound rate, and this Army team has been held down recently and have scored fewer than 70 points in 4 of their last 5 games, but you've got a Loyola Maryland team that all of a sudden has been really giving up the points. They've given up at least 74 points in each of their last 4 games. I do think that Army going to be able to find their seed legs here. I do think that they are going to be able to find a way to get the ball inside and get the job done against a Loyola Maryland team that's a bit soft on the interior other than having Mr. Elich. So I did set my line at 5.5. I'm going to be willing to lay with Army, and did set my total at 147.5. I'm also in on this total over as well. 306.5 of 5, 306.5 of 6. It is high point. They hope to not be a low point as they're on the road against Charleston Southern. Charleston Southern, an 8.5 point home underdog. Total on scheme between 153.5 to 154. Set my line at 8. So here at an 8.5, going to be willing to take the points. This high point team has been one of the more efficient teams in all of college basketball in terms of mid-major offenses. They're in the top 75 in terms of points scored on a per possession basis, and they get these high totals despite the fact that they are truly one of these slower teams in all of college basketball. 320th in the country in terms of total possessions per game. This is a Charleston Southern team that they are a little bit of a faster team, about 122nd in the country in terms of total possessions per game, but I do like what Seton Nimley has been able to build with this program, as they've got a really versatile guy in Tajay Kelly who's been able to give you 19 points, 8.5 rebounds per game, and then R.G. Johnson pairs up with him very well. He's been able to supply the team with about 5 assists per contest. It is a team that they turn the ball over about 13 times per contest, but you've got Johnson shooting 38% from three-point range. DJ Turner-Patrick has just returned into the lineup as well. He was last year a 10-point per game scorer, missed the first 10-plus games of the season. He began his career at South Florida. In his 2 games since returning, he's been able to give the team 31 points and 12 rebounds in those 2 games. And then Lamar Odin Jr., who transfers in from Drexel, he's been able to give you about 7 points, 4 boards per contest. Charleston Southern is going to be outdone on the glass by Jocelyn Bodu, who for this high point team is able to give you a little bit over 7 rebounds per game. High point about 145th in the country with regards to rebound rate, though. That's a little bit down from where it has been in past years, and Charleston Southern certainly not going to be able to win that battle down low, but Charleston Southern is a respectable team on the glass. Their rebound percentage about 143rd in all of college basketball, so I think that they match up a little bit better than what a lot of people think. DeMaurian Williams, he has been an absolute dominator in the backcourt for high point. He's able to give you 15 points, 3 assists, shoots 46.5% per game. Kazagifa chips in there 14 points per contest, but Chase Johnson has had 2 games where he's just went into inferno mode and has scored 11 points or fewer, and pretty much all of the other ones, as he had a 24-point performance against Norfolk State. Opening night, he had 31 points. In all of his other 15 games, 11 points or fewer. So you just don't know if you're going to be able to get out of him. And Abdoulaye Thiam, down to only about 5.5 points per contest. Bobby Pettiford, who is a nice star over at East Carolina, part of that Kansas team that won the title a few seasons ago, shoots 44% for 3, 8 points, 3 assists per contest, but just expected a little bit more out of him. It's a high point team that's been incredibly efficient with regards to their offense. They've gotten past the 74-point plateau in each of their last 5 games, but this is also a Charleston Southern team that's gotten to at least 69 for their last 5, with the lone exception coming against Georgia. So an interesting circumstance involving a high-point team that they've been so efficient on offense, but despite the fact that they just play super-duper slow, and I think that Charleston Southern is going to be able to play relatively even up on the glass. I set my total 146. I'm in on the under. I'm willing to take 8.5 plus here with Charleston Southern. 306.5 of 7, 306.5 of 8. USC Upstate is playing us a Presbyterian. Presbyterian is a 5 to 5.5 point point road favorite, and your total on this game between 147.5 to a 148. I set USC Upstate as 1.5 point favorite. I like them outright on the money line. For this USC Upstate team, it has been a less than savory year for them, no question about it, but I think that Mr. Dean, his first name is Mr., his last name is Dean, is able to take over this game. 15.5 points, 5.5 boards. It is an Upstate team that they turn the ball over 15 times per contest. They shoot about 29.5% from three-point range, very much less than savory. And for this Presbyterian unit, overall, they haven't been too bad with regards to their offense. They're shooting well north of 35% from three-point range. They do leave themselves open to some opportunities, though, as well. On the road, they're allowing opponents to shoot 37% from three-point range. Corey Mincy has been your main man in the backcourt. He's been able to give this team 15 points per contest from three-point range. He's been bombing it at about 38.5% clip, and it is a Presbyterian team that overall, they do shoot about 37% from three-point range. Jalen Peterson, great name. He's been able to give you about 7 rebounds per game. With Jonah Pierce being out with injury, he was really one of your main post presence with 7 rebounds, a block, 13 points per game. That has been affecting this team quite a bit. And for this Presbyterian team, all in all, I do think that they've been able to round into relatively okay form. And for USC Upstate, even though it has been a defense that this year it's been less than effective, I think is the best way of being able to put it in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. This is a team that's clocking in about 342nd in all of college basketball. I do sense some improvement, and they've been much better than when they've been at home. They're allowing about 18.5 points fewer per 100 possessions when they're at home rather than on the road. Presbyterian has been sort of the opposite. They have been really relinquishing a lot more with regards to their defense when they've been on the road as well. And I do think that with the UFC Upstate, just being able to have guys like a Chico Carter in the backcourt who's been able to give you about 8 points per contest, a little bit of facilitation, I think that that's going to be big for them moving forward. And for this Upstate team, what else I think is just massive for them, as well as the fact that they have been able to have a little bit more out of Cameron Gregory, who's been able to give you 3.5 assists per game. That takes the load off of Mr. Dean out there in the backcourt as well. And he's only shot about 27.5% from three-point range, but Carmelo Atkins has been able to shoot 35% from three-point range. This team has been able to improve a little bit more with being able to grab second and third chances. And I do think that with a Presbyterian team that doesn't necessarily do a great job in terms of hitting the offensive glass, that this bunch in USC Upstate finds a way to get the job done at home. I do like USC Upstate outright on the money line, set them as 1.5 point favorite. Upstate playing at a pretty rapid pace, and Presbyterian, they've been scoring quite a few more points as well. So I did set my total 155.5. I'm in on the over, and I'm in on USC Upstate outright on the money line. 386.509, 386.510. It is Boston U, and they're going to be playing up to American. American is an American 1-point underdog, and your total on this game, you're going to be finding it at a 127.5 to a 128. Did set my total 127.5. So here at a 128, I'm in on the under. Both of these teams well outside the top 275 in terms of total possessions per game. And when it comes to American, they certainly haven't given it up from three-point range. They're outside the top 275 in terms of opponents' three-point shooting percentage. And for American, just overall with this defense, points allowed on a per possession basis, they're about 326th in the country. Boston U has been pretty rock solid with regards to their defense, 128th in the country in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. That said, this is also a Boston U team that's turning the ball over about 14.5 times per contest in terms of turnovers on a per possession basis. They're outside the top 275 in the country. Boston U has been able to find a little bit more three-point shooting, that despite the fact that top scorer from last year, Miles Brewster, has taken a little bit of a setback. He's given you only about 9 points per contest, shooting less than 30% from three-point range. Meanwhile, Corona Alexander, along with Michael McNair, have been your main guys in the backcourt, a combined 4 assists. Both of these guys have been able to give you double figures, with Anderson leading the way with 13 points per contest and is shooting 35% for three. McNair shoots 44.5% from three, but Otto Landrum coming back into the lineup after he's one of the team's top rebounders from a season ago is big. He's been back for 7 games, about 4.5 points, 4 rebounds per game. I think that that's going to be big for Boston U getting the job done in this one, as American has dealt with some injuries in the backcourt. Colin Smalls has been able to come up big as he's giving you a double-figure amount of points. He's throwing in there a little bit of facilitation with about 2 assists per contest as well, but it's all about Matt Rogers. He's 6'9" combo player, 15.5 points, 5.5 boards. He's shooting about 37.5% for three, and all in all, it is an American team that they shoot about 37.5% from the outside. To the credit of American, they don't allow you to take too many shots from three-point range, but they do allow you a pretty good three-point shooting percentage as well, which that's a little bit of an issue for them. And despite the fact that American has Rogers down low, they do rank outside the top 225 with regards to rebound percentage. I do think the Boston U, a team that ranks in the upper half of college basketball with regards to rebound rate, they do find a way to be able to get the job done. So I did set Boston U as a 3.5 point favorite. I'm going to be willing to lay the 1, and with this total at a 128 or higher, I'm in on this under as well. 365.11, 365.12. This is is a game that I wrote up. UNC Asheville, they're going to be on the road, and they're going to be facing off against Longwood. Longwood is a favorite of 3.5 points. It's on this game between 153 to a 153.5. I said Asheville as the 3.5 point favorite. I like them outright on the money line. Now for Asheville, they do rank outside the top 310 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, while Longwood more in that neighbor about 150th. But this Longwood team is outside the top 300 with regards to their 3-point shooting percentage. They shoot less than 30% from 3-point range. I do like what you're getting out of Kobe Garland. 11.5 points, 4.5 assists per contest, shoots about 32% from 3-point range, but team does turn the ball over about 12.5 times per contest. And for Longwood, they've actually been an above average team with regards to rebound percentage. They don't have a single guy in the roster that gives you north of 4.6 rebounds per game. You've had a pair of guys in Michael Christmas along with Elijah Tucker who will be able to combine for about 20.5 points per contest. They combine for about 9 rebounds per game. And Tucker has been a little bit hot and cold, but he has gotten hot recently. 13 plus points in each of the last 4 games. Has been massive for this unit, but I thought that Kyrell Luch, who began his career over in the Patriot League, played a bit of time over at St. Bonaventure, would be able to give you a little bit more. He had double figures over at St. Bonaventure 2 seasons ago. 8.5 points, 2.5 assists on 19% 3-point shooting, so a little bit less than tremendous there. Meanwhile, on the flip side for UNC Asheville, it's all about this backcourt and the fact that they have been able to do a nice job finding open looks from 3-point range, as Fletcher Abey, 11 points per contest, shoots 43% for 3. All in all, it's an Asheville team that shoots 35% for 3. Joshua Banks has been able to give you 15.5 points per contest, but so has Jordan Marsh as well. And Banks is shooting 40% for 3. Marsh, more of your main facilitator with about 4.3 assists per contest. But you've also got Toyaz Solomon, who's been able to give you 8 rebounds per game, and Greg Gant Jr. is a little bit more of a just sheer rim protector that's able to give you 6 boards per contest as well. This has been an Asheville team that's really exploded with their offense. Granted, they had 2 of these games come against non-D1 teams, but they have been able to get past the 95-point plateau in 4 of their last 5 games. Meanwhile, for this Longwood team, they've gotten past 77 points in 4 of their last 5 games, but I do think that Longwood is going to try to dial it back just a little bit, and Asheville has been a top 75 team in the country in terms of opponents' 3-point shooting percentage, so did make my total 148 in on the under, but I think that UNC Asheville finds a way to win it from the outside. I like them outright on the money line, made them a 2-point favorite. 3-6-5-13, 3-6-5-14. Winthrop is on the road against Gardner-Webb. Gardner-Webb is a underdog of 2 points, so your total on this game, it is 157 to 158. Set Gardner-Webb is a 1.5 point underdog. I'm going to be willing to take the deuce here with them, but don't necessarily want them on the money line, as I do think that this is a little bit of a toss-up game, and I do think that Winthrop has a little bit more firepower to be able to win it, but with this Winthrop team, they do need to dial back the turnovers. They've been turning the ball over darn near 15 times per contest. I like what Kelton Telford is able to bring you, 16.5 points, 8 rebounds per game. Now, Isaiah Richards on the flip side for Gardner-Webb is able to give you in that neighborhood about 8 rebounds per game as well, but this has been a Winthrop team that, despite the turnovers, they've still been able to do a pretty solid job of running some good, clean offense. They rank in the top 200 in terms of points scored on a per possession basis, and that's more than what could be said for Gardner-Webb. Gardner-Webb right now, in terms of points scored per possession, about 222nd, though. They are scoring about 13 points more per 100 possessions at home rather than on the road. The biggest issue that you've got for Gardner-Webb, though, no real facilitator. They don't have a single guy that gives you north of 2 assists per contest. Anthony Sullivan, along with Daryl Simmons, both of these guys have given you about 2 assists, or combining for about 31 points per contest, but the 16 turnovers per game, that is very crucial, and that is very costly for Gardner-Webb. Winthrop in the top 175 in terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis, but even with Winthrop's harebrained and up-tempo style, it has not had them just be completely, shall we say, immune from bad shooting performances. They have scored 68 points or fewer in now 3 of their last 5 games, and this is a Gardner-Webb team that's looking to hang their hat a little bit more on the defensive side of things. They have been able to do a nice job going out there, giving up 72 or fewer in their first 2 games here in Big South play, and I do think that with what they're able to provide down low, it's going to be a bit of a speed bump to this Winthrop team that has been able to get quite a bit out of Kason Harrison, who's been able to give you 3+ assists per contest, but it's really one of the few guys that's able to bomb it from 3. He's shooting 37% from 3, but this is a Winthrop team that they shoot 67.5% the free throw line. They only shoot about 30% from 3-point range as a collective. That's outside the top 295 in the country, and for this Winthrop team, it's just not really inspiring what you're seeing on the defensive side of things. Both of these teams do have their liabilities on offense, but I do think that Gardner-Webb going to be able to do a relatively solid job down low in this game, a top 75 unit with regards to rebound percentage. Meanwhile, with Winthrop, they're checking in more around 212th in the country, so I do think that Gardner-Webb's rebounding allows them to hold in there, and for Winthrop, shooting just 67.5% the free throw line could be an issue in a nip and tuck game. So at 2+ going to be one take the points with Gardner-Webb. Did somebody total 155.5 as well, even though you get a lot of possessions in this game. Neither of these teams actually shooting amazing from the outside. So in on the under and the points with Gardner-Webb, 3-6-5-15, 3-6-5-16. Bucknell is going to be playing us to Lafayette. Bracket Bus and Bison are a 4.5 to a 5-point favorite. Total on this game is 129, and I did somebody total 135.5. I do like the over Bucknell is now a top 75 team in the country in terms of total possessions per game. Lafayette still outside the top 250 with this regard, but I do think that Bucknell going to be able to get their offense going a little bit more, and I do think that there's going to be second and third chances for them to be had on the offensive glass, as you got Noah Williamson, the true 7-footer, giving you a block, 7 boards, 14 points per game. It is a Bucknell team that's only shooting about 30.5% from three-point range. Ian Moda missing for about the second half of the season. That's been a little bit of an issue for this team, but you've got Josh Bosco is able to shoot 37% for three. He's supplying the team with 4 assists, 4.5 rebounds, 14 points per game, and then you've had Alvin Edmonds be able to help out a little bit with the facilitation, 2.5 assists per game. Doesn't necessarily shoot at the world's most rate from three-point range, and this is a Lafayette team that they themselves are leaving something to be desired with regards to their three-point shooting. Lafayette is shooting about 34% from three-point range. That's about 141st in all of college basketball, and for Bucknell, they only shoot about 30% from three-point range, but I do think that they're going to be able to control things on the glass. You do have a guy down low in Justin Vanderbond, a true 7-footer for this Lafayette team, who's been able to give you between about 5 to 6 rebounds per game, throws in there about a block and a half per contest as well. But this has been a Bucknell team that time and time again has been able to do a relatively solid job of being able to generate some blocks, and this is a Lafayette team that with their rebound rate 284th in all of college basketball. Lafayette is one of those holes greater than some of its parts teams, with having Alex Shulkin with 11.2 points per game really be the main scorer for the team. Lafayette doesn't really turn the ball over a ton, despite the fact that the facilitation is a little bit here nor there. Mark Butler, 3 assists per contest. The team only turns the ball over about 10.5 times per contest, but that said, I do think that Bucknell finds a way to be able to get by in this one, as Bucknell has really been able to increase their, shall we say, defensive ferocity in regulation and regulation only. They've now given up 66 points or fewer in 3 of their last 5 games, lone exceptions coming against Syracuse and Gonzaga. Meanwhile, this has been a Lafayette team that has now given up 70 plus in 4 of their last 5 games in regulation. So, did somebody total 135.5? I think that Bucknell cranks up the tempo and gets their style in this game. So, laying it with the Bison and going to be going in on this total over as well. We wrap things up with 3 of 6-5-17, 3 of 6-5-18. Colgate plays also Lehigh. Lehigh is an underdog of 4.5 points. Total on this game, 138.5. I did set my line at a 4.5 as well, so going to be waiting upon a little bit of line movement here. This opened up more around about a 3.5 to a 4. If we can get back there, we'll be willing to lay it with Colgate. Colgate, I do think, has taken quite a bit of a setback this year, but they seem to be finding that mojo a little bit more with Nicolas Louis-Jacques being able to give you quite a bit of something from the outside. He's been able to slide the team with 12 points per contest, shooting 36.5% from 3, and that's big because Colgate, year in and year out, typically this is a top 40 team with regards to their three-point shooting percentage. Way down this year, Kyle Carlissimo has been able to give you about 38% three-point shooting, but not give you a lot of volume with only about 4 points per contest. But now for Colgate, they're going to be able to get their defense reset, as you've had Jeff Woodyard be out of the lineup for about 7 games this season due to injury. Now he's back. He's their main rebounder with about 6.5 rebounds per game. Nobody else on the roster gives you north of 4.5 rebounds per game. It's a Colgate team that's currently 321st in the country with regards to their rebound percentage. Lehigh has not been doing a whole heck of a lot better with regards to their rebound rate, though, as they're 353rd in all of college basketball. Right now with Lehigh, they're relying upon Keith Higgins for a little bit of everything. He's been able to give the team 18 points, 5 rebounds, also versatile, but you can tell that this team is really missing Don Pearland, who decided to transfer to Boise State in the offseason. Tyler Whitney-Cindy, 13 points, 3.5 boards. He shoots 38% for 3, and this is a Lehigh team as a collective. They do shoot about 38% from the outside, but they've really slowed down their tempo. Last year, Lehigh was the fastest team in terms of total possessions per game in the conference. This year, they are outside the top 300 in terms of total possessions per game. It is a Lehigh team that, while they do a rock-solid job of being able to pop it from three-point range, they themselves have had a tough time being able to guard it. On the road, they're allowing opponents to shoot 35.5% from three-point range, and for all the warts that Colgate currently has, this has been a team that has been able to do a relatively solid job of being able to get their tempo, being able to get their style. They seem to, year in and year out, know how to be able to play these Patriot League games, and for this Colgate team, their defense has been able to come back into form, giving up 66 points or fewer in 3 of their last 4 games. So, I do think that things are going to be a little bit more muted on the offensive side of things. I did set my total as a result. I had a 136.5. I'm in on the under of Colgate, willing to lay up to 4 with them, and that'll wrap things up for the Wednesday edition of Coast to Coast Hoops, now part of the VSiN Family Podcast. Big thanks to Ryan McIntyre of the Sports Gambling Podcast Network for joining me in the last segment. If you do like hearing from this fine podcast, Coast to Coast Hoops, you're able to subscribe wherever your podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Spotify, Stitcher, and TuneIn. If you have a question, comment, segment idea, what have you for this podcast, you have one of 2 ways we offer those in. First one is my Twitter/X timeline at @GNet_D1. Keep in mind there's the name does not matter, so as per usual, please do send these into the timeline. And the other way is find an Apple Podcast review. If you rate this podcast 5 stars, it is very much appreciated. From there, you're able to fire in whatever you'd like to on this podcast by that 5-star review, and I'm coming at you guys every single day on this podcast, which means I'll be back with you once again tomorrow. Thank you.